Chapter 607. The drumming tribe's actions made Yang Sui's wavering heart firm up. Although he didn't know why the crocodiles would suddenly make such a hasty decision, he had a feeling that it was worth it when the fire seed of the drumming tribe was in turmoil. After dragging it out for so long, Yang Sui didn't have the patience to wait any longer. Now was the time to solve this problem while everyone was resting. When the Rain tribe gathered their people to discuss, the people of the other tribes nearby felt the change, but they didn't know why there was such a big movement. Some of the more timid ones even gave up their original plans to go out and hid at home, afraid that another destructive event would happen. Too many things had happened in the past 2 years, and they were all scared. They should have succeeded, Xiao Xian said as he stood on the mountain, looking at the drumming tribe on the other side of the river. Yes, the shamaness was relieved. She had a good impression of the drumming tribe. Even the people who came from the other side of the sea liked the drumming tribe. After interacting with so many tribes, the drumming tribe was their best neighbor. The drumming tribe also produced water moonstones, so they didn't want anything to happen to the drumming tribe. Now that the drumming tribe had successfully merged with the drumming tribe, they were naturally happy. 2 days later, Xiao Xian, the shamaness and the chief went to the drumming tribe to visit their new neighbor, who had just merged with their fire seed. In these 2 days, the complicated emotions of the drumming tribesmen had faded away. However, when Xiao Xian went over, he could still feel a sense of loss from the drumming tribesmen, but they couldn't help but be excited. The fire seed was gone, and the fire pond no longer had a fire that burned all year round. It also couldn't provide them with any protection. The power of the fire seed had been dispersed into every drumming tribesman's body. They could only rely on themselves from now on. Since the founding of the tribe, everyone was already used to the fire seed's customs. Now that there was a sudden change, no one could accept it immediately. Perhaps only the young children could accept it quickly. What do you think? Xiao Xian asked Fu Shi, who was chopping wood silently. Actually, the drumming tribesmen had already prepared all kinds of firewood before winter came. The haystacks behind the house were still tall. It's all right. After pondering for a while, Fu Shi finally managed to squeeze out 2 words. Then he continued to chop the firewood. While waving the stone axe, he said, I feel like I'm full of energy, but something's not right. It's normal. Our tribe was like this at the beginning too, Xiao Xian said. You'll get used to it. Sigh. Fu Shi didn't know how to express his thoughts, so he didn't say anything and continued to chop the firewood. In the drumming tribe, there were many people like Fu Shi. They felt their whole body was full of energy, but at the same time, something was not right. This was because the fire seed had not completely merged with their bodies. It'll be fine once the fusion is completed. To the drumming tribe, the fire seed was one of the most important things. Another important thing was the water moon stones. After the disappearance of the primitive fire seed, the water moon channel, which originally produced water moon stones, could no longer obtain energy from the fire seed. The water moon stones could only be obtained through other channels. With Xiao Xian as an example, after the drumming shaman merged with the fire seed, he tried to turn the water moon stones into glowing water moon stones. However, he never succeeded. The drumming shaman wasn't in a hurry. He knew there were 2 problems to solve. First, he had to complete the fusion of the fire seed in his body. Secondly, the water moon stones were produced when the moon was at its brightest. Other than the fire seed, it also borrowed the moonlight. So he thought, at least he had to wait until the moon came out. Seeing that the drumming tribe hadn't fully adapted yet, but nothing bad happened, the Xiao Xian and the others felt a little relieved. As for the water moon stones, they could only wait until the moon came out to see if they could succeed. Even if they couldn't get the water moon stones, the drumming shaman didn't regret his decision. After the drumming tribe merged their fire seed, although it was still winter and snow fell from time to time, it didn't stop those curious people from coming over to investigate. Towards these people, the drumming tribe's reaction was still calm. They stopped those people from getting close to the tribe, and told the people in the tribe to do what they needed to do. It would be best if they could finish merging their fire seed before winter ended. Once winter ended, they would have a lot of things to do. If they didn't have the water moonstones, They would have to find another way to survive. As for Yinjiao, the Yinjiao people were also worried. They decided to reopen the trading point after the end of winter, when the weather warmed up. They would also invite the leaders of the other tribes living in the Flaming River region to participate. However, after thinking about it, they felt that their original plan was far from enough. In other words, they felt that this wasn't enough to show off Yinjiao's strength. Tribesmen had their own rules, which were different from the slave masters. Perhaps many people on the other side of the sea couldn't understand these rules, but here it was. That was why if they wanted to start their first nonviolent war here, they had to think about it carefully. These days, Xiao Xian was often called to the mountain for discussions. However, even though Xiao Xian had already integrated into the tribe and tried his best to get used to the tribe's way of thinking, Xiao Xian's way of thinking was different from traditional tribesmen. That was why when it came to matters like this, Xiao Xian mostly listened to other people's suggestions. He rarely expressed his opinion. However, the winter was passing day by day, and it was almost over. If the winter ended early this year, the moon would come out in a few days. They had to solve this matter before the end of the winter. Only then would they have time to act. Otherwise, if they dilly-dallied until the end of the winter to make a decision slowly, things would be rushed later. What should we do? Some people thought that they should invite people from further away. Others thought that they should put on a show to show off their strength, especially their weapons. However, there were different voices of disagreement. Seeing the people in the room arguing, Xiao Xian thought of something. He turned to the shamaness and said, "Why don't we have a show-off feast?" Although the tribe hadn't officially announced the new leader, they had already sat down according to the new order. Xiao Xian sat with the other elders, and the shamaness sat next to him. After Xiao Xian finished speaking, the room fell silent. Duo Kong and Ta, who were arguing, turned to look at Xiao Xian. Everyone else also looked at Xiao Xian, waiting for Xiao Xian to continue. Although Xiao Xian's voice wasn't loud, he only wanted to discuss with the shamaness. Everyone else was fighting for their seats, so they might not notice him. Unexpectedly, as soon as he moved, everyone looked over and pricked up their ears. With their strength and hearing, it wasn't difficult for them to hear Xiao Xian's words. Xiao Xian didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that everyone's heartbeat seemed to be louder and faster. Xiao Xian saw that everyone was looking at him, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he looked at the shamaness, then at the other elders. "I think Xian's words are feasible." Ao touched the hilt of his knife, and his eyes flashed. He couldn't help but tap the back of the knife with his fingernails. He took a deep breath and tried to speak in a calm tone. "A show-off feast is indeed a very good idea. Thousands of years have passed, and Yinjiao hasn't held one yet." Ao thought of something and looked at Zheng Luo. He only knew about the situation here, not the other side, so he looked at Zheng Luo for his opinion. Zheng Luo smiled bitterly and shook his head. "We haven't held one either." There were records of banquets in their ancestors' handwritten notes, and there were also some stories that were passed down from generation to generation that involved banquets. However, those were only heard as stories and never taken seriously. Perhaps they had such dreams when they were young, but after they became adults, the burden on them increased, and they became more realistic. They no longer had extravagant hopes, and felt that it was good enough to be alive. Even though the tribe's situation had improved, they never thought about it. It could be said that every tribesman who knew about show-off feasts, whether they were Yinjiao or outsiders, had a dream that one day they could hold a show-off feast. However, until now in the Flaming Horns tribe, in the past 1,000 years, no one had done it. If you asked what Yinjiao people's dreams were, one of them would definitely be a show-off feast. Are we really going to do it?" Duo Kong whispered. His voice was much softer than before, but it wasn't because he lacked confidence or had different opinions. He was just too excited and tried to suppress his emotions, so he didn't shout. The true emotions in his eyes showed how much he agreed with Xiao Xian's words. His burning eyes seemed to tell the decision-maker that he was just waiting for the announcement to begin preparations. Looking at the others, whether it was Ao and Zheng Luo, who had retired as elders, or the current quasi-chief Gigu and pseudo-adept Guizhe, their eyes flashed with a burning light. Show-off feast. If Xiao Xian hadn't mentioned it, they wouldn't have thought about it. These 3 words had been mentioned for 1,000 years. Back then, it was so unattainable, but now it made their hearts pound, and they felt that they could give it a try. His blood seemed to boil, and his body temperature seemed to rise. His face flushed with excitement, and his breathing became rapid. He rubbed the hilt of his sword more frequently, and his breath became turbulent. He was like a volcano that had been suppressed for 1,000 years, and was about to erupt. Was it finally coming? Could Yinjiao really hold a show-off feast? Not for you, not for me, not for anyone, but for the entire tribe. Not for anyone in the tribe, but for the other tribes living in the Flaming River region. Xiao Xian used to think that the people who did this were arrogant, idiotic. But now, Xiao Xian could understand the feelings and thoughts of the other tribesmen. In order to make people follow you willingly, you didn't need to use force to beat them up again and again, nor did you need to persuade them one by one, nor did you need to offer them benefits. You just needed to hold a show-off feast, and naturally, countless followers would come willingly to worship you. Your reputation would also rise. In the middle of winter, they felt their blood boiling uncontrollably, as if it was about to spurt out of their pores. They couldn't stay calm. What was their purpose in opening up the trading point and inviting other tribesmen? Of course, it was to increase Yinjiao's prestige in this region, gain the support of other tribes, including the drumming tribe, and gain their respect. If they could do this, then it would indeed be a good way to prove Yinjiao's strength and status. In the eyes of many people, the distorted values and outlook on life were like a skill that emitted holy light in such a living environment and era. Only those who could truly master it could have such a respectable aura. He had to show off. Not only did he have to show off, he had to do it well. Now, Xiao Xian was about to do what he had dreamed of when he was still living in the cave. He still remembered that night, when Lang Jie and the others were roasting meat by the fire. They had said to Xiao Xian in the tone of an elder, "You still don't understand." Back then, Xiao Xian had thought that one day, he would be an idiot too. Now not only was he about to do what he thought was an idiot, he was about to bring the entire Yinjiao tribe with him. What does everyone think of Elder Xiao Xian's suggestion? The old woman saw that no one spoke, and couldn't help but slam the cane in her hand on the ground. The sound of the walking stick hitting the ground with a bang brought everyone back to their senses. Their eyes were out of focus, and they were secretly enjoying themselves. What do you think? This suggestion was too damn good. Duo Kong wanted to stand up and jump up and down to show his excitement. If anyone has a different opinion, you can speak up, Gigu said. Those who were about to speak up because of the old woman's words quickly shut their mouths. The muscles around their mouths were twitching because they had closed their mouths too hard. It affected their facial nerves, making them look like they were gnashing their teeth. The room was so quiet that only the sound of everyone's heavy breathing could be heard. After waiting for a while and seeing that no one responded, the shaman chuckled and nodded to Gigu, who was sitting at the front. Gigu's gaze swept over the elders. He didn't say anything, but he could tell the other party's decision through eye contact. Finally, his gaze swept over Xiao Xian, who was sitting at the front of the elders' seats. Seeing Xiao Xian nod, Gigu and Guizhe whispered to each other before saying, "If that's the case, then we'll do as the great elder says. However, it's still winter, so it's not the best time to hunt. After winter ends, the tribe will start moving." No one objected to this decision. Anyway, winter was almost over. They could use this time to prepare. Once winter was over, they would start hunting. Duo Kong also planned to hunt an even fiercer beast as a trophy. When the time came, he could show it off at the banquet and let everyone know that it was him, the leader of the Yinjiao tribe, who hunted it. It was the result of him, Duo Kong, leading the team. After the meeting ended, everyone hurriedly left and gathered their main subordinates. They rubbed their palms together and planned to do something big after winter ended. In the past, they had imagined that the tribe wouldn't have to worry about food and water. Now they had done it. In the past, they had imagined that the tribe could become stronger and have more things that others didn't have. Now they had done it, and they would do even better in the future. In the past, when they were just children who hadn't awakened their totemic power, They would listen to the stories of the elders sitting on the stone blocks in front of the house. They had imagined that when they awakened and had power, they would hold a banquet to show off their wealth. Now their dreams were about to come true. Chapter 608. Winter had yet to end, but the tribe was already bustling with activity. It was no longer as cold as before. Not only that, but every Yinjiao tribesman had uncontrollable smiles on their faces. Xiao Xian noticed that old Ku's wrinkles had deepened over the past 2 days. News of Yinjiao's plan to hold a banquet had already spread throughout the tribe. Everyone was gearing up for a big event after the end of winter. No one felt that it was extravagant or wasteful. Just like Xiao Xian, they couldn't wait to raise both hands in approval. Moreover, this banquet would not be held by a single person, but by the entire tribe. Just the thought of it made them excited. Many of them had not slept well for several days in a row. They were too excited and couldn't fall asleep at all. The chief and shaman had said that each of their clans would have a chance to show off when the time came. The number of new bronzes was still limited. Even if some people already had one would definitely not be enough for hunting. The rest would have to be settled with stone tools. Therefore, from the top of the mountain to the bottom, the sound of stone tools being polished could be heard all the time. Even at night, some people could see firelight seeping through the narrow gaps in their houses. Although they couldn't hit the stone tools recklessly late at night, because it would be too noisy, they could still polish them. Due to the cataclysm, the night swallow that used to appear at night had disappeared for a period of time. They had not been seen recently either. Some people said that they had flown to other places with the migrating birds, while others said that they had been scared away by the cha-cha. No matter what the truth was, the night swallow was no longer seen in the tribe. This made the tribe, which no longer had a primitive fire seed, feel safer. Besides, even if the night swallow returned, the tribe would wipe them out and not let them pose a threat to the people in the tribe. Xiao Xian did a rough calculation. If they were going to hold the banquet, they would have to wait for about 100 days after the end of winter. This way, the opening of the trading point would have to be delayed. But that didn't matter. It wouldn't be too late to open the trading point after the banquet was prepared and the invitations were sent out. The first outsider to find out about Yinjiao's upcoming banquet was Yang Sui. He had wanted to discuss the matter of the fire seed with Xiao Xian, but he did not expect to hear such shocking news. That was a banquet to show off the rich, and it was held in the form of a tribe. This was crazy. For many tribesmen today, Yinjiao's actions were indeed shocking. Have you decided? Xiao Xian asked. I've decided. Yang Sui looked away from the busy Yinjiao people in the snow and nodded hard. The drumming tribe's actions made him more determined and convinced many people in the Rain tribe. Even if there were still some who opposed, most of them still supported Yang Sui. For us, it's not the best time to merge the fire seed, but I have to make preparations first. Xiao Xian did not say much. He explained to Yang Sui the things he needed to pay attention to in detail. He believed that after this, Yang Sui would go to the drumming tribe to ask for their advice. When Yang Sui returned to the Rain tribe, he was still in a trance. When he came back to his senses, he was already sitting in the shaman's house, surrounded by a circle of people. Most of them looked at Yang Sui with condemnation, as if Yang Sui had done something wrong. But because of Yang Sui's influence in the Rain tribe, they did not dare to say it to his face. Even if they agreed to merge the fire seed, they still felt uncomfortable and kept a straight face all day. Now that Yang Sui had returned from Yinjiao, they did not smile. I've already learned the method of merging the fire seed from Yinjiao. I've also asked the drumming tribe. I'll think about it carefully and make a final plan before I tell you the specific time, Yang Sui said. Many people sitting around just glanced at Yang Sui and then lowered their eyelids again to avoid Yang Sui seeing the disapproval and anger in their eyes. Even if Yang Sui did not see their expressions, he could guess what they were thinking. However, Yang Sui did not say much. Instead, he sighed heavily. This time I went to Yinjiao and got some news. Hearing Yang Sui's words, the surrounding people's eyelids twitched. Although they didn't look at Yang Sui, they had already pricked up their ears. They wanted to know what Yang Sui had learned. His long sigh just now contained a lot of complicated emotions. One of Yang Sui's supporters couldn't help but ask, "Shaman, what news did you get? Is Yin Jiao doing something again?" "That's right." Yang Sui looked around meaningfully and said, "Yin Jiao is holding a banquet to show off their wealth." "What?" The person who was unhappy jumped up as if he had been kicked. He stared straight at Yang Sui. "It's really a banquet to show off their wealth, and not something else?" "It's true." Yang Sui became serious too. He emphasized every word. "It's happening when the Flaming River trading point opens again." Everyone in the room gasped in unison. The supplies they had now were only enough to ensure their survival. They still owed a lot of debt, and they had to scrimp on every meal to survive through the winter. On the other hand, the Flaming Horn tribe was already considering holding a banquet to show off their wealth. How rich must the Yinjiao tribe be to have the idea of holding a banquet to show off their wealth? After the initial shock, the room erupted into chaos. They also knew about the showing off banquet, but they had only heard about it, and had never seen it with their own eyes. Perhaps the big tribes in the central region had held such banquets before, but the Rain tribe had always lived in a remote place, and had never experienced it. Everything was just hearsay. But now, Yang Sui was telling them that they would be witnessing a grand banquet in the near future. Yang Sui ignored the chatter around him and continued, "I've already received the notice. The Flaming Horns will inform me of the specific time and time. I will bring a group of people to the Flaming River trading point to participate." The discussion suddenly stopped. "Bring some people?" These words were quite subtle. "Then can I go too?" someone asked Yang Sui. "What about me?" "Me too." Yang Sui didn't give a direct answer. Instead he said, "We'll decide when the time comes. I don't know how many people I can bring." "There's a limit to the number of people? What's the point of that? How many people do we have?" An elder complained. His words were laced with jealousy. "It can't be helped. After all, the Flaming Horn tribe still needs to invite other tribes. That way there will be more people. That's why every tribe has a quota. The Grand Elder of the Flaming Horn tribe asked me to prepare in advance, so that I don't know who to bring. Of course you're bringing me. Shaman, I've always supported you." Me too, me too." "Shaman, I suddenly feel that merging fire seeds isn't bad. Yinjiao can already hold banquets, and they've already merged their fire seeds. You can't go wrong following them." Yang Sui looked at the people around him. A few days ago, they were still strongly protesting, but now they had changed their minds. It wasn't that they changed their minds because of Yinjiao's banquet, but they knew that the merging of fire seeds couldn't be changed. Even if they protested, it was useless. Instead of continuing this stalemate, they might as well use this opportunity to show their loyalty. Who knows, they might even be able to attend Yinjiao's banquet. They had never really attended a banquet in their lives. In fact, the meaning of the banquet had changed a little. In the beginning, it was a way for the leaders of the tribes to show off their abilities and increase their prestige. If it was a banquet organized by a powerful tribe, the people invited were all influential figures in their respective tribes. Attending such a banquet was also a form of recognition of their status. At least, it was said that the banquets organized by the central tribes were like this. Presumably, the banquet organized by the Flaming Horn tribe would be similar. How could they let go of such an opportunity? Yang Sui smiled. He mentioned Yinjiao's banquet for this purpose. Driven by benefits, these people would be more supportive of him. With the success of the Flaming Horn tribe as an example, those who had previously opposed the idea would now reconsider. Even the few stubborn old men in the tribe who were the most against the idea had begun to waver. The banquet's impact on the tribesmen was much greater than Xiao Xian thought. Xiao Xian didn't know that Yang Sui had already used the banquet to win people's hearts. He was also preparing for the hunting after the end of winter, and the sacrificial ceremony. Once winter was over, the annual sacrificial ceremony would begin in a few days. Returning to this place again, there were more people, and the mountaintop was already crowded. He had been renovating the mountaintop with others these days. When the snow stopped and the cold wind stopped, two thin crescent moons appeared on both sides of the night sky in the dark night. The warriors on the watchtower saw them and blew the horn. Woo! In the silent night, the horn sounded from all the watchtowers and spread to every corner of the tribe. Even the drumming tribe on the other side of the flaming river could hear it. The Yinjiao warriors didn't even put on their animal skins. They ran barefoot out of their houses and looked at the crescent moons in the sky. They howled in excitement, mimicking the howls of the beasts in the forest. Even so, it couldn't quell the fighting spirit in their blood. For the sake of their childhood dreams, they were about to enter the forest to hunt and show their spoils of war to more people. Duokong roared, "Little ones, are you ready?" "Yes, we can leave anytime. My big knife can't wait any longer." Roar. Sounds of agreement came from all over the mountain. Ha 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 ha. Duokong laughed as he went back to his house to lie down. However, he was too excited to sleep. He closed his eyes and counted the beasts for a while but still couldn't fall asleep. He rolled over and ran to the next house to grind his stone tools. On the other side of the flaming river, many people in the drumming tribe heard the commotion from Yinjiao. They also knew that Yinjiao wanted to hold a banquet and were very envious. Because of this, many people in the drumming tribe felt less nervous about merging their fire seed. Yinjiao was the first tribe they knew of to merge their fire seed. The more successful Yinjiao was, the more it proved that this path was feasible. Naturally, they would feel more at ease. Fu Shi looked at the other side of the river. He couldn't see the other side because of the trees, but he could guess what was going on based on the sounds he heard. "We'll get better and better too." In the drumming tribe, those who woke up only opened their windows or listened to the sounds. They didn't come out. A few people walked out of the houses in the center of the drumming tribe. They walked hurriedly and looked nervous as they ran towards the shaman's house. Chief Fanmu pushed open the door and entered the shaman's house. There were already a few people inside. The person in the middle was the shaman of the drumming tribe. At this moment, the shaman held a water moon stone in his hand. It didn't have any light and was very rough. It looked like a normal stone in the river. Those who didn't know wouldn't even look at it. But now, everyone who entered the house had their eyes on the small stone in the shaman's hand. After merging their fire seed, they couldn't change the stone because there was no moonlight. Now the moon was out and there was moonlight. This should be enough, right? Even though it was just a thin crescent moon and wasn't as bright as a full moon, they could still feel the difference. The shaman of the drumming tribe took a deep breath and opened the door to an empty space in front of the door. Without the trees, they could see the two dim moons in the night sky. Taking a deep breath, the shaman of the drumming tribe began to mobilize the power of the fire seed in his body. The power of the fire seed existed in the totem in his mind, and also in his blood, bones, and muscles. A trace of power extended from the totem flame in his mind. It flowed down his neck, passed through his arm, and gathered all the power along the way. Finally, it was transmitted to the palm that held the stone, and merged with the stone. The shaman of the drumming tribe could feel that this stone was different from the ones he tried in the winter. He could feel that the water moon stone in his hand was alive. It was no longer an ordinary stone. Rustle, rustle, rustle. The sound of fine particles falling was heard slowly. It was a sound that the people of the drumming tribe were familiar with. Every year when there was a full moon, they could hear this sound at the edge of the water moon canal. Although this sound was very slow and intermittent, and was far from the movement of the water moon passage when the moon was full, this alone was enough to excite them. Even if they were very confident that they wouldn't fail, they still had to be prepared for the worst. They had even thought of the situation where they couldn't create water moonstones anymore. The scene in front of them proved that they would continue to hear this familiar sound for the rest of their lives, until they could no longer hear any sound in the world. Not far away, the chief of the drumming tribe, Fan Mu, was holding his breath. His clenched fists were trembling because of too much force. Especially when he heard that sound, his trembling became even more intense. The stone in the drumming shaman's hand looked very ordinary, but now the top of the stone was shining brightly. It was the light of the water moon stone. Even though the light was very small and dim, it could be ignored if you didn't pay attention. Everyone who saw this scene waved their fists in the air excitedly. Yes, it really works. The great elder of the Yinjiao tribe is telling the truth. We can really make the water moon stone by ourselves. After the joy of the Yinjiao tribe, the drumming tribe also laughed happily. In the dark night, Some big and small figures came out of the holes in the ground. A crocodile looked up at the night sky and made a few low growls. Winter was over, the river was about to thaw, and the hunting was about to begin. Chapter 609. After the ceremony in Yinjiao, Xiao Xian returned from his hunt in the forest. He returned to the tribe with the rest of the hunting party. According to the rules here, they walked up the path of glory from the bottom of the mountain to the top. They went through the cleansing ceremony and sorted out the game. When everything was over, Guizhe told Xiao Xian that the shaman of the drumming tribe had come to visit 3 times while they were out hunting. However, he didn't seem to be in a hurry, and it didn't seem like something big had happened. The shaman of the drumming tribe? Xiao Xian thought for a moment. The shaman of the drumming tribe had come to visit him so frequently because of 2 things. It was either the fire seed or the water moon stones. He didn't go to the others? Xiao Xian asked. If it was the fire seed, the shaman of the drumming tribe would have gone to the 2 former shamans of Yinjiao, who had already become elders, if he didn't see Xiao Xian. No, he just came every time to ask if you're back, and then he left. Guizhe briefly explained what had happened during this period of time. I can roughly guess. Xiao Xian passed the game in his hands to the warrior beside him and pointed at the 2 sharp teeth of the giant beast. Keep an eye on this pair of teeth for me. You guys handle the rest. The warrior in charge of handling the game quickly nodded, because they brought back too much game this time. After they brought back the game, they were all processed by the experienced old hunters. Then they were thrown into the ice cave to freeze or pickle the meat. The rest of them went back to rest. For the Flaming River Trading Points banquet, this was their first hunt of the year. Everyone was exhausted. They had gained a lot from this hunt. Maybe it was because everyone had merged with the fire seed, or maybe it was because of the new bronze equipment, plus the excitement of the banquet. The hunting party was much smoother than before. The trophies they brought back were piled up like a mountain. This time, Xiao Xian and the rest of the hunting party went to the green patch in the forest. It was an area dominated by plants. Because it was more dangerous there, Xiao Xian didn't bring Caesar along. After losing an eye, Caesar's movements seemed to have returned to normal. However, if he really went there, he would still be restricted. That was why Xiao Xian only brought Cha-Cha. Speaking of which, Xiao Xian found Cha-Cha there. At that time, Cha-Cha was just an egg stolen by other birds. When Xiao Xian brought it back, he almost cooked it and ate it. This time, Cha-Cha followed Xiao Xian to the green patch and fought with the flock of birds there. However, they were birds of the green patch, and there were many of them. Even though Cha-Cha had undergone 2 transformations at Eagle Mountain, it still couldn't easily gain the upper hand against a flock of birds like that. Even after returning to the tribe, Cha-Cha was still in a bad mood. After Xiao Xian went down the mountain and returned to his house, he didn't immediately go to the other side to look for them. He wanted to take a nap first. Unfortunately, not long after Xiao Xian closed his eyes, the shaman of the drumming tribe came over. No wonder the shaman of the drumming tribe was so well informed. After all, when the Yinjiao hunting party came back, they made too much noise. Even across the Flaming River, the drumming tribe could hear and see them. This was the first time the shaman of the drumming tribe saw a Yinjiao hunting party return. No wonder when he came to look for Xiao Xian, the Yinjiao people told him that if the hunting party came back, the other side would definitely hear them. So that's why, after coming to Yinjiao, the shaman of the drumming tribe went straight to Xiao Xian's house. Xiao Xian yawned as he watched the shaman carefully take out a pouch made of animal skin. Then, he took out a water moonstone the size of an egg. However, compared to the water moonstones he used before, this one was much dimmer and had no shine on its surface. The water moonstones used to be as smooth as a peeled egg and had a slight coolness to them. However, the one in front of him wasn't like that. Other than the dimness, it was rough to the touch. The surface of the crystal had many uneven wrinkles like sand. This is a water moonstone. Xiao Xian was confused. That's right. A smile appeared on the shaman's face. This water moonstone was made by me. It took me 8 days. During the 8 days of making the water moonstone, other than eating and drinking when he was too hungry or resting, When he didn't have the energy to continue, the shaman of the drumming tribe spent the rest of his time making the water moonstone. When Xiao Xian was on the other side of the sea, he felt very dizzy when he turned the stone into a water moonstone for the first time. The shaman of the drumming tribe was even more dizzy. He couldn't even complete the transformation in one go. He had to do it over 10 times in 8 days. This was why the surface of the water moonstone wasn't smooth. Every change on the surface was a node for the shaman of the drumming tribe to continue after he rested. Plus, the moon had just come out at that time. It wasn't bright, so it was difficult to make the water moonstone. That was why the stone was so dim after it was completed. However, all of this proved that Xiao Xian was right. They could indeed change the water moonstone themselves. Now, after merging with the fire seed, everyone in the drumming tribe was like a miniature version of the fire seed. The power of the fire seed still existed in their bodies. The success of the shaman of the drumming tribe meant that the others in the tribe could do the same. Take it slow. Try a few more times, and you'll get better. Xiao Xian handed the stone back to the shaman. He wanted to comfort him, but he didn't expect to see the shaman's proud face. He didn't seem to be ashamed or troubled by this. I think so too. The shaman of the drumming tribe wanted to share this with Xiao Xian. He wanted to share his experience in turning stones into water moonstones. After all, in the entire Yinjiao tribe, only Xiao Xian had this special ability. It was useless to ask anyone else. After chatting for a while, the shaman of the drumming tribe hurried back. He was now making the second water moonstone. He had already made half of it. He should be able to finish it in 2 days. Compared to the previous one, this one was a day earlier. It was still an improvement. Plus, he didn't know if it was because the moonlight was stronger, or because he was more familiar with the fire seed. But the second water moonstone was brighter than the first. Now that the shaman of the drumming tribe had succeeded in making the first water moonstone, everyone in the drumming tribe started to learn this skill. This skill was no doubt a shortcut for them to survive. It was also their tribe's advantage. The water moonstones that the crocodiles had taken out from the water had been kept in their own homes. This year, they didn't have to wait for the full moon. They could rely on their own abilities to complete everything. They also didn't have to worry about being attacked and robbed by other people with bad intentions on that day. The drumming tribe's restless hearts calmed down because of the successful conversion of the water moonstones. At the same time, the rain tribe, who had just finished their fire seed merging ceremony, was still in the early stages of the process. Xiao Xian didn't have much time to understand these people. He still had a new mission. Because Yinjiao and the Hui tribe were partners this time, Yinjiao was hosting a banquet at the Flaming River trading point. Although they said they would invite the neighboring tribes, they still had to invite those who were close to them. They also had to inform the other major tribes. That was why Xiao Xian brought an invitation letter personally written by the new shaman. He sat on Cha-Cha's back and headed to the grasslands. There were other people who set off with Xiao Xian, but they weren't going to the same place as Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian was going to the grasslands to invite the Hui tribe. He was also going to send an invitation to the Tian Shan tribe. The others were going to send invitations to the other major tribes. The Yinjiao people didn't care if the other tribes were going to the banquet or not. They just wanted to inform the other tribes that Yinjiao had the ability to host banquets. Xiao Xian followed the route he took the first time he went to the grasslands with the expedition team. Although the disaster was intense, the changes on the grasslands weren't as obvious as other places. At least, what Xiao Xian saw now wasn't much different from what he remembered. The Hui tribe left behind a map of the grasslands, but Xiao Xian didn't choose the fastest route. In this season, the grasslands were green again. Waves of grass rose with the wind and spread into the distance. Thud, 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 thud. Behind a distant mound, a group of patrolling soldiers on horses passed by. This was something they had to do every day, because they raised cattle, sheep and other livestock. In addition to guarding against poachers on land, they also had to watch out for birds of prey in the air. As soon as they saw a suspicious figure in the air, they entered a tense state of alert. "It's an eagle," someone shouted. "Be careful, ready the arrows. Wait for it to fly low, then shoot." The leader of the patrol, Yi Bei, signaled the people behind him to be ready to shoot the eagle. Even if they couldn't kill it, they just had to chase it away. However, the eagle was flying too high in the sky. When they looked up, Yang Guang was too dazzling. Plus, the eagle was flying so high that they couldn't see what it looked like. They could only tell that it was an eagle based on experience. As for what kind of eagle it was, they couldn't see it clearly. "Leader, it's flying towards our tribe," someone shouted anxiously. The area they were patrolling now was only the edge of the Feng tribe. If they went further, there would be herds of cattle and sheep grazing on the grasslands. The herders might not be able to stop the predator in the sky in time. "Blow the horn." Bei raised his hand and signaled the people next to him to blow the horn, reminding the people in other places of the tribe to be careful in the sky. However, when the man just took out the horn and was about to blow it, he heard a few whistles in the sky. "That's the sound of a wooden whistle?" Bei stopped the man with the horn and looked up at the sky. He used his hand to block the dazzling Yang Guang and stared at the figure in the sky that began to fly lower. If someone whistled, it meant that it wasn't an eagle living alone in the forest, but belonged to a tribe. There were too many tribes with eagles on the grasslands, and the whistles in the sky didn't belong to any tribe he was familiar with. The whistles continued. After watching for a while, Bei waved his hand. "Put away the arrows." No matter who it was in the sky, they didn't mean to attack or steal. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been discovered so easily, and didn't try to hide after being discovered. In this case, it wasn't good to point arrows at them. On the grasslands, pointing arrows at the other party wasn't a friendly gesture, but an offensive one. Before figuring out the other party's background and intentions, Bei didn't want to offend them easily. Their tribe was located at the edge of the grasslands, so they had more contact with traveling teams. When they encountered things, they had more to think about. They thought more comprehensively than many tribesmen who didn't interact with the outside world. Of course, putting away the arrows didn't mean that they didn't have to be on guard. The people who put away their bows all touched their knives. However, when Bei saw the figure in the sky flying closer and closer, his eyes became bigger and bigger. That. What is that? It's so big." The people behind Bei looked at the approaching figure and said, they didn't feel it when they were far away, but now that they were closer, they could estimate the size of the eagle in the sky. That was why they were so shocked. On the grasslands, there were many tribes with eagles, but only a few tribes had eagles like this. The two most famous tribes were the Hui tribe and the Tian Shan tribe. Even though they both lived on the grasslands, Bei didn't know much about these two tribes, because he rarely interacted with them. That was why he couldn't tell which tribe the whistle belonged to. The eagle flew over the horses. Even though it was still some distance away, the wind from the flapping of its wings almost blew the people on the horses away. When the eagle flew over, a figure jumped down from its back and landed steadily on the grassland in front of the horses. Bei and the others looked over and tightened their grip on the hilts of their knives. They stared at the young man with a bag on his back. "Everyone, long time no see." Xiaoxian greeted them with a smile. Bei felt that the person in front of him looked familiar, but he couldn't remember who it was. "Ah, Xiaoxian, it's you." Several young figures in the crowd jumped down from their horses and ran towards Xiaoxian. The first one was Guaer. When old he and the others were still wanderers, they had been herding for Guaer's family. Speaking of which, Xiaoxian had saved Guaer's life and carved a wolfwood carving. At that time, Guaer was just a child, but now he was a teenager. Doya and the others beside Guaer had also grown up. Now they were warriors who could officially follow the patrol. Their clothes were different from other children in the tribe. As soon as Guaer shouted, Bei remembered. The vigilance on his face faded and he smiled. The Yinjiao tribe was more powerful than their tribe. They were always polite to people from powerful tribes, not to mention old acquaintances. However, he didn't know why the Yinjiao people had such a big eagle. The last time he saw Xiaoxian, his eagle was not so big. Did they change it? "Why did you come to the grassland at this time? What's the matter?" Bei asked. "I plan to go to the Hui tribe." Xiaoxian didn't hide this. Hui tribe? Bei was puzzled. Why would they go there? To invite them to the banquet at the Flaming River trading point. Banquet. A weak tribe couldn't host a banquet, let alone a banquet that invited people from a big tribe. Oh right, this is for you. As he spoke, he took off the things on his back and unwrapped the linen cloth. With a flick of his hand, he tossed 2 giant beast teeth to eBay and the rest. eBay caught one of the beast fangs, but his hands were trembling as he held it. He had never seen such a big tooth. Chapter 610. When Xiaoxian decided to go to the grasslands, he decided to visit the Feng tribe. First, he wanted to see how the tribe was doing. It was rare to find a familiar grassland tribe. Second, the Feng tribe's geographical location was special. They would often meet travelers from other tribes. This part of the grasslands was a place the Winterfront Tower's fleet had not been to before. Xiaoxian planned to start with the Feng tribe and let them help spread the news. Although there was no formal invitation, Xiaoxian did tell eBay and the others that if they had time, they could go to the Flaming River trading point. It would be great if they could make it in time for the banquet. But if they couldn't, they could still buy some animal skins. Not every tribe could send out a traveler team. The Feng tribe didn't have one. They just stayed where they were and waited for other tribes to send their teams. When they heard Xiaoxian's words, the Feng tribe was shocked. Setting up a trading point wasn't anything new. There were trading points in other places. But what Xiaoxian told them made the Feng tribe's people stunned even after Xiaoxian left. Setting up a trading point was one thing, but a banquet? That wasn't something that could be held easily, especially on the scale of a show-off banquet. It was unbelievable. For people who valued food more than their lives, asking them to take out food to hold a banquet was like asking for their lives. That was why they envied those tribes who could take out large amounts of food to hold banquets. The standard for a show-off banquet was to have a large amount of food left after the banquet ended. Hiss! eBay took a deep breath. Xiaoxian was no longer in front of him. The shadow of the eagle in the sky was getting further and further away. It was only a small dot in the sky, disappearing quickly. Boss, that man, is what he said true? Only now did a warrior of the Feng tribe dare to come forward and ask. Just now, he was really shocked by the giant eagle in the sky. He wasn't familiar with Xiaoxian. So now that Xiaoxian and the eagle had left, he had the courage to ask. eBay wanted to reply, "How would I know?" But before the words came out of his mouth, his gaze fell on the huge beast tooth that was even taller than him. His tongue seemed to be tied, and he couldn't say anything. The beast tooth stood upright with one end touching the ground. eBay rode on the horse and hugged the beast tooth to prevent it from falling. With such a large animal tooth, if he did not rely on external forces, even if he could carry it himself, it would be quite difficult for him to move freely, and the horse would probably be unable to move. The beast tooth was already so big, so one could only imagine how huge the beast was. Although he had never seen such a huge beast before, he could tell many things from the beast tooth in his arms based on his experience. There were still bloodstains on the beast tooth, which meant it hadn't been pulled out for long. Moreover, even if it was just a tooth that had been removed from the beast's body, the ferocious aura of the ferocious beast still lingered on it. When he caught the beast tooth, the horse's legs went soft, and it almost fell down. It was also very anxious. If it weren't for the fact that he had raised this horse from a young age and trained it well, it would have screamed and run away the moment Xiaoxian threw the beast tooth. Thinking about how Xiaoxian easily jumped down from the eagle's back with 2 huge beast teeth, stood steadily, and then threw the beast tooth as easily as a ball. There should be many people like this in the Yinjiao tribe, right? Such a tribe couldn't hold a banquet? eBay didn't believe it himself. In the traditional view of the Feng tribe, the Yinjiao tribe that had just emerged in recent years, even if they had been in the limelight before, such as destroying the Wanshi tribe and so on, there was still a big gap between them and the other old tribes. But now, many people's views had begun to change. Perhaps they had greatly underestimated this tribe. Of the 2 beast teeth, one was caught by eBay, but no one dared to take the other one. When Xiaoxian threw it out, the horse didn't wait for the rider to react and hurriedly retreated a few steps. That was the nature of animals, to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. They could feel the beast's aura coming from the beast tooth. Boss, boss, what about this tooth? After Xiao Xian left, the others hurriedly dismounted and came to the other beast tooth on the ground. They touched it and felt the beast's aura at close range. Even if they didn't see the beast's complete form, they still felt a sense of fear. However, the more frightened they felt, the more they couldn't bear to put it down. Take it back, Bei said. These two beast teeth were given by Xiao Xian as gifts between tribes. There were engravings on the teeth, such as Yinjiao Xiao Xian presents to the Feng tribe, and engraved with the Yinjiao totem. Beast teeth were hard and huge. It wasn't easy to carve or draw on hard objects, but the words and engravings on the teeth in front of him were very smooth and exquisite. He couldn't find any flaws. Bei didn't know what Xiao Xian used to carve or draw on the teeth, but he wasn't in the mood to think about it. He moved his hand and felt the smooth surface of the teeth. The smoothness of the teeth proved that the beast often used them. They weren't just for decoration. These were the teeth of a real beast that hunted for food. The killing aura still lingered in the air. Yinjiao tribe, Flaming River trading point? Bei retracted his gaze and ordered his men to send the two beast teeth back to the tribe. Since they were given away, they now belonged to the Feng tribe. They could even sell them at a higher price. However, Bei wasn't the only one unwilling. The other warriors of the Feng tribe wouldn't be willing to give away these two giant beast teeth, just like that. As expected, after Bei and the rest brought the fangs back, the Feng chief could guess Xiao Xian's plan. This was a mutually beneficial deal. At the same time, he really liked the fangs. He even placed the two fangs in front of his house, one on the left and one on the right like door gods. The chief of the Feng tribe even used animal skin to carefully clean the teeth every day. He was afraid that the teeth would turn gray and get stained with mud and grass. Just like how a treasured sword couldn't be covered with dust, these two beast teeth should be kept sharp and smooth. It was as if they could be put back into the mouth of the beast to continue hunting. The two beast teeth caused a sensation in the Feng tribe. Ever since then, every expedition team that arrived at the Feng tribe would be attracted by these two eye-catching beast teeth. When they found out that the Feng tribe didn't plan to sell these two beast teeth, they sighed regretfully. In most places on the mainland, these beasts didn't exist. If you wanted to find them, you would have to go to the fearsome beast forest. In the past, no one dared to go there. Even if they went now, it would be difficult to find them. The fearsome beast forest had changed too much during the disaster last year, so no one dared to go there. The words engraved on the beast teeth made more people remember the Yinjiao tribe. Whenever they mentioned the Yinjiao tribe, travelers who had been to the Feng tribe would think of the two beast teeth. Then they would realize, oh, you're talking about the Yinjiao tribe that hunts giant beasts. At the same time as Yinjiao, the Flaming River trading point also spread. Xiao Xian had drawn a simple map from the grasslands to the Flaming River trading point on the other beast tooth. He used paint that was hard to fade. Even if the paint faded after a long time, the carvings on the beast tooth wouldn't disappear. Many expedition teams also copied the map. Many of them were brave enough to follow the map to the Flaming River trading point. The best beast skin and the best fearsome beast meat were extremely tempting to many tribesmen. All of this was within Xiao Xian's expectations. Just as the Feng tribesmen and the expedition teams who saw the beast teeth were discussing Yinjiao and the Flaming River trading point, Xiao Xian had already followed the map and reached the Hui tribe. The Hui tribe had a large grassland and an endless mountain range. These were all part of the Hui tribe's territory. When he was at the edge of the Hui tribe's territory, Xiao Xian saw an eagle patrolling in the sky. It was an eagle that hadn't experienced what happened at Eagle Mountain. When it saw Cha-Cha, it cried out. It had seen Cha-Cha before. Back when Xiao Xian went to the other side of the sea, Cha-Cha came to the Hui tribe by himself and met many of the Hui tribe's giant mountain eagles. However, Cha-Cha had changed so much that the eagle couldn't recognize him. Its cry was a warning signal. Caw! Cha-Cha ignored the eagle's warning and cried out to himself. His cry was louder and sharper, as if he wanted to tear the clouds apart. However, Xiao Xian knew that they couldn't fly around, so he signaled Cha-Cha to stay put. At the same time, he showed the patrolling man a stone card. Xiao Xian had gotten it at the peak of Eagle Mountain. It was a gift from a giant eagle of the Hui tribe. Please inform them that Xiao Xian from Yinjiao is here to visit, Xiao Xian shouted. The patrolling man was very young. At first, he looked at Xiao Xian with obvious hostility, but when he saw the stone card Xiao Xian took out, his expression changed. If Xiao Xian came alone, or with other people on other beasts, he definitely wouldn't believe that stone card was real. He would even blow the whistle to signal an enemy attack. However, the giant eagle that Xiao Xian was riding was indeed a giant mountain eagle. It was the same type of eagle as their tribe, and not the type from Tian Shan tribe. Yinjiao tribe. Hearing that it was Yinjiao, the man believed Xiao Xian a little. He had heard that the Hui tribe was cooperating with Yinjiao, but he always felt that the Yinjiao tribe wasn't qualified. He didn't know why their chief would choose to cooperate with Yinjiao. However, when he saw the giant eagle not far away, his original opinion was shaken. That eagle was even bigger than Shan Dao, who had been to Eagle Mountain once. He didn't know if Gula knew it. Wait! The man didn't take out his whistle. He just moved his cheeks, and a white bone whistle appeared in his mouth. The sharp whistle was like the cry of an eagle. It spread out with a specific rhythm, echoing between heaven and earth. The cry of the patrolling eagle attracted some people who were patrolling in other places. But they couldn't make the decision. They hadn't been on a long journey before, so they hadn't seen Xiao Xian before. They couldn't tell if Xiao Xian was real or not. They didn't know when the people who could make the decision would come. During this time, the people in the sky were divided into two groups. One group was patrolling the Hui tribe, and the other group was Xiao Xian standing on the eagle's back. You're Xiao Xian? A Hui tribe warrior looked at Xiao Xian several times. Many people in the Hui tribe knew the name Xiao Xian. When the expedition team came back, they brought back a lot of news. Among them, the chief mentioned Xiao Xian from Yinjiao the most. This made many young people in the Hui tribe unconvinced. They didn't want to admit it, because they hadn't seen it with their own eyes. The few people from the Hui tribe were about to say something when the eagle carrying them retreated a little. It seemed to feel unsafe, so it retreated a little more. When they didn't say anything, the giant mountain eagles they cooperated with would rarely behave like this. This abnormal situation drew their attention back to the giant mountain eagle on the other side. It seemed that the eagle on the other side wasn't in a good mood. When the eagle was in a good mood, it was easy to fight. When it was in a bad mood, it was even easier to fight. It was no wonder that the eagles on this side retreated. The eagles on this side had not experienced the change of Eagle Mountain, and the one on the other side was obviously several levels higher. Even if they had the advantage in numbers and could fight 5 or 6 against 1, they might not be able to gain the upper hand. It was very likely that they would be defeated very badly. Fortunately, the eagle opposite them didn't want to fight for the time being. It was just in a bad mood. The few warriors of the Hui tribe didn't know that the reason why Cha-Cha didn't move its claws was not because it didn't want to bully the weak. The giant mountain eagle wasn't that noble. In fact, Xiao Xian moved his feet a little to signal Cha-Cha not to act rashly. Besides, what was the point of bullying a young eagle when it was in a bad mood? Even if it wanted to fight, it should wait until the big eagle of the Hui tribe appeared. Even if it didn't move its claws, when Cha-Cha's eagle eyes swept over them, the few people and eagles on the other side all looked nervous. Because they knew the habits of the giant mountain eagle, they knew that once the eagle got angry, it wouldn't be easy to deal with it. Caw! An eagle's cry came from afar, followed by several other eagle cries from different directions. People from other places heard the noise and rushed over. There were only eagles flying over from 2 directions. There were no people on the back of the eagles. Maybe the people weren't out on a mission at this time. So the eagles acted on their own, and came over directly when they heard the noise. The first eagle cry came from Shan Dao. The person on Shan Dao's back was Gula. Haha, Xiao Xian, I didn't expect it to be you. Gula was surprised when he saw Cha-Cha. He didn't recognize Cha-Cha either. Only when he flew closer did he recognize Xiao Xian on the eagle's back. I specially came to invite you this time. Xiao Xian let Cha-Cha fly closer, and through an animal skin scroll to Gula. Gula withdrew his gaze from Cha-Cha, and took the animal skin roll. He opened it and read it quickly. However, as he read, The smile on his face froze as if he didn't understand it. He read it again from the beginning, and again to make sure that he didn't read it wrong. Gula found it even more difficult to understand. Didn't Yinjiao leave their ancestral land because of the disaster? Didn't they migrate to another place to start a new life? Shouldn't a tribe that was forced to migrate be in a difficult situation? Why were they building a trading point and holding a banquet now? If they weren't doing well, why would they do such a thing? He thought Xiao Xian came to ask for help, but things were unexpected. No matter what the truth was, no matter how many questions he had, now was not the time to talk about it. You must be tired from the journey. Why don't you rest in our tribe? Gula asked, putting away the animal skin scroll. Thank you, Xiao Xian said. Gula patted Shan Dao. Let's go back. Cha-Cha followed. Chapter 6:11. The Hui tribe's totem looked like an abstract curling cloud. This tribe was also located at a higher elevation, close to the clouds. It belonged to the plateau region. The horses they raised galloped on the plateau. Xiao Xian could see a large group of very energetic horses from the sky. Even if he didn't go down to take a closer look, he could feel that the quality of the horses here was higher than the ones in the Feng tribe. Gula still didn't slow down, flying towards the mountains not far away. Most of the people of the Hui tribe lived on the mountains, just like their totem, surrounded by clouds. The part that belonged to the Hui tribe was almost the highest part of the area. The mountains that stretched into the distance seemed to suddenly rise up here. The mountains were covered in snow all year round, and the mountainside was surrounded by clouds. This was where the people of the Hui tribe lived. There were some eagles flying around the mountains. Many of them weren't big, and were considered young in the group of giant mountain eagles. Some of them flew over curiously, but probably felt Cha-Cha's bad mood, so they cried out and flew away. They flapped their wings and flew through the clouds, dispersing the white fog. The air swirled around their wings, and the white fog also swirled. Then, a long tail appeared and gradually dispersed. Gula brought Xiao Xian to an area on the mountainside. There were many stone houses built around the mountainside, and some were directly dug into the mountain to live in. Xiao Xian saw many people of the Hui tribe skillfully climbing the mountain walls. There were children training. There weren't many adults around, but there were more eagles. Even if they were just young mountain eagles, they could still catch a child. When the eagles saw children sliding down the mountain walls, they flew over and caught them. Then, they lifted them up and put them down on a raised rock platform. This platform was specially made by the people of the Hui tribe. It was for the children to practice climbing on the mountain walls to rest. Looking at the situation over there, Xiao Xian felt that Cha-Cha seemed a little hesitant. Just now, his flying rhythm changed for a moment. There were no other strange occurrences in the surroundings. There were eagles flying over, but those eagles had already flown over. Even if Cha-Cha had a reaction, it shouldn't have appeared only now. There wasn't anything strange below. There were no other eagles around. Xiao Xian looked up and his eyes narrowed. He realized that on the mountain where the Hui tribe was, near the top of the mountain, near the border of the snow, there was something inconspicuous. Because its fur was too similar to the color of the mountain, if it didn't move, Xiao Xian wouldn't have noticed it. Was that an eagle? It seemed to be different from the others. It looked like a ball. The mountain was not flat, and there were many steep and dangerous places on the mountain. It was very rare for that thing to be able to stabilize itself on that cliff and not fall. We're here. Gula asked Shan Dao to stop at a mountain path. This was a path dug out by the Hui tribe. It was the only path that could be used on the entire mountain. If you wanted to go up the mountain, you could only climb. The road around the mountain was not flat, but it was wide enough. Even Cha-Cha could rest on the road. It was believed that when the road was first built, the people of the Hui tribe had considered the possibility of the giant mountain eagle resting. It's here. Gula pointed to a cave not far away. Xiao Xian looked over. The entrance of the cave was very big, about 10 meters high and 8 meters wide. It was in the shape of an inverted U. There was a carving on the wall above the entrance. It was the Hui tribe's Hui character, but it was written with cloud patterns. It looked like curled clouds, and it was very similar to the Hui tribe's totem. Our shaman and chief are there. Gula said. In the Hui tribe, that cave was only used by the shaman and chief. It was like a mansion, and only the chief of the tribe was qualified to live in it. The people inside must have received the news in advance. When Xiaoxian landed, there were already people walking out of the cave. Xiaoxian knew the elder of the Hui tribe. She was waiting at the door. Welcome to the Hui tribe. The shaman and chief are inside. Let's go in and talk. She smiled. Xiaoxian followed He to the entrance of the cave, and then he turned back and said to Cha-Cha, "You go play by yourself, and get to know the other eagles." This is. She looked at the eagle behind Xiaoxian with a puzzled expression. It's Cha-Cha. It's him. He's back. She and Gula were both very surprised, but they soon understood. To be able to enter Eagle Mountain again, under such circumstances and successfully come out, it was no wonder it had grown so big. It would probably continue to grow. The effects of Eagle Mountain's metamorphosis had not yet fully manifested, and it would take time to prove it. Congratulations, she said enviously. Giant mountain eagles usually only went to Eagle Mountain when they had no other choice. It was rare for Cha-Cha to go to Eagle Mountain and come out successfully. However, Cha-Cha, who was stared at by He and Gula, did not even look at them. Even when Xiaoxian spoke, Cha-Cha did not respond. Instead, he looked up at the mountain as if he was on guard. Xiaoxian followed Cha-Cha's gaze. Swoosh! Some pebbles and small stones rolled down from the mountain wall. At the same time, there was a rustling sound on the mountain. Compared with Cha-Cha and other eagles, the rustling sound was more crisp and tender, but it was different from the cry of ordinary young eagles. Seeing this, the surrounding Hui tribesmen's expressions changed. The next moment they ran away. A black shadow fell from above, accompanied by the sound of a large number of pebbles and small stones sliding down. The fluttering fluff was blown away by the wind. Cha-Cha and Shandao, who was also resting on the road, used their wings to block in front of their bodies, as if putting up a shield to block the flying stones and fluff that made them unhappy. He and Gula raised their hands to push away the feathers in front of their eyes. When they looked over, their faces turned pale. Xiaoxian, are you okay? Gula hurried over. The figure that fell from the mountain just happened to land where Xiaoxian was standing. This made the surrounding people's jaws drop. Some people's faces were already filled with horror. They covered their faces, as if they were too embarrassed to look in that direction. He also went over nervously. However, there was no smell of blood. He should not be dead, right? The shaman and chief who had just come out of the cave saw this scene. The shaman was so scared that he dropped his cane. If the grand elder of Yinjiao was killed here, how could they give the Yinjiao a satisfactory explanation? Fortunately, soon, Xiaoxian's voice came from below. Damn, this guy is really heavy. With the sound, the falling shadow was lifted up a little. Xiaoxian raised his hands and looked at them. He realized that his hands seemed to be holding claws. Those that could grow such claws were usually birds of prey, especially ferocious birds. Looking carefully, there were feathers flying everywhere. They were from the feathers of young birds. Young birds? Xiaoxian thought of the ball he saw near the top of the mountain when he arrived. He lifted his palm and moved it back and forth, weighing its weight. It was really heavy. So heavy, how could it fly in the future? Also, where did such a big young bird come from? It must have been born not long ago. It could not fly, and had not changed its feathers. The faces of the surrounding Hui tribesmen couldn't help but twitch when they saw this scene. He lifted it up. Not only did he lift it up, he even weighed it twice. This was this Yinjiao? The people who didn't go with the expedition team had the deepest impression of the Yinjiao people. No matter what others said, it was not as good as seeing it with their own eyes. The Yinjiao people were really strong. No one in their tribe had been hit before. After all, everyone was paying attention. However, some stupid giant mountain eagles had been hit while resting on the road. There was once an eagle as big as Shandao that was smashed until its bones were broken. It couldn't fly for a long time. Since then, the surrounding giant mountain eagles would avoid it whenever they saw it. But they didn't expect that the Yinjiao person who was smashed in the face was not only unharmed, but also lifted it up and weighed it twice. The Yinjiao had monstrous strength. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the young eagle held by Xiaoxian seemed to feel that something was wrong. It looked down, but because it was too fat and round, it rolled down. The young eagle that had rolled around on the ground shook its feathers, causing a lot of fluff to fly in the air. It was a young eagle not much smaller than Cha-Cha. Even if Shan Dao stood next to the young eagle, he still looked thin. It was rare to see such a big young eagle. This young eagle's eyes seemed to have been drawn with ink. It had a circle of black feathers, different from a Cha-Cha. The giant mountain eagle's feathers were not exactly the same color, but most young eagles inherited the characteristics of their parents. It was understandable that they were different from a Cha-Cha. After rolling for a while, the young eagle stood up and looked back at Xiaoxian. It didn't care about Cha-Cha's vigilant eyes, nor did it look at the surrounding warriors and other eagles. It opened its big round eyes and looked at the mountain wall again. Then it moved its claws and walked over step by step. It was only a young eagle, and didn't have the ability to fly. It hadn't hunted by itself yet, but its claws were unusually sharp. When it walked on the ground, it left marks on the rocky mountain path. When it reached the mountain wall, the young eagle flapped its wings and jumped up. It grabbed the mountain wall and many small stones fell. Its seemingly heavy body was firmly nailed to the mountain wall. "What is it doing?" Xiaoxian asked. "It's practicing." She looked at the young eagle on the mountain wall. His gentle gaze contained reverence, and his tone was full of emotion. Young giant mountain eagles start practicing soon after they are born. They practice climbing, flying, and the use of their wings, beak, and claws. Every young eagle has to go through thousands of practice sessions. Those who are timid and incompetent may lose their lives because of all kinds of accidents during practice. However, it is precisely because of this cruel elimination that the soaring giant mountain eagle exists today. She told Xiaoxian that the young eagles might break their wings in front of them during training. However, no matter how sad the people of the Hui tribe were, they wouldn't interfere. They couldn't be compassionate towards young eagles during training. This was something everyone in the Hui tribe had been warned about since they were young. It wasn't that they were heartless, but it was for the good of the young eagles. If they wanted to become qualified giant mountain eagles in the future, and have the ability to go to Eagle Mountain, they had to work hard when they were still young. Otherwise, when they encountered the first bottleneck, they would die for various reasons before they could go to Eagle Mountain. Even if they could make it to Eagle Mountain, the chances of them coming out alive would be lower than other eagles. Therefore, all the blood, sweat, and toil now were all for the future trip to Eagle Mountain. Giant mountain eagles are always challenging themselves. Even if they fell countless times and suffered countless injuries, they wouldn't be scared. They would climb up and fight again. This was why the Hui tribe worshipped the giant mountain eagles. They used the eagle's behavior to motivate themselves. The fluffy little bird moved up the mountain wall step by step. It looked like it would fall at any moment, but it was still firmly nailed to the wall, and moved up little by little. From time to time, small pebbles and small stones would roll down. The people of the Hui tribe were already used to this. They had people in charge of cleaning up the fallen pebbles and stones on the road every day. This was the norm in the Hui tribe. Everyone in the Hui tribe looked at the climbing figure with obvious admiration and encouragement. However, the young eagle couldn't see it. "I have a question," Xiaoxian suddenly asked. "Go ahead." She looked away. "It was just born, right?" Xiaoxian asked. "That's right." The shaman of the Hui tribe came over and answered the question. "It broke out of its shell in the past winter. It was born in the coldest time of the winter. No wonder it had such thick feathers. When it shook, it flew like willow catkins." Xiaoxian thought. "It's still a young bird. It shouldn't have grown much. Was it very big when it was born?" Xiaoxian asked again. "Very big," the shaman of the Hui tribe said proudly. It was worth being proud to have such an eagle. "How big was the eagle that laid such a big egg?" Xiaoxian asked. "The eagle that gave birth to it." The shaman of the Hui tribe looked at Xiaoxian. He seemed to find this question very interesting. He narrowed his eyes and smiled. "Haven't you seen it before?" "I've seen it before." Xiaoxian was puzzled. He quickly thought of something, and took out the stone card. He pointed at it, and looked at the smiling shaman. "Is it that one?" The shaman of the Hui tribe nodded. "Yes." "Damn. That was the difference. How big was Cha-Cha when it was born? It was not much bigger than an egg, right? It could easily crush it with one hand. But look at the one in front of him. It could easily crush a cow. Xiao Xian remembered what Gu La had explained to him about giant mountain eagles. The higher the level of the giant mountain eagle, the bigger the baby eagle, and vice versa. The lower the level of the eagle, the smaller the eagle's egg. No wonder Cha-Cha was unhappy with it. It was like a poor loser seeing a rich second generation with a golden spoon in his mouth. It was inevitable that he would feel unhappy. Its starting point was too high. It was much higher than other giant mountain eagles. No wonder the other giant mountain eagles were afraid of it. However, the baby eagle did not care about the stairs around it. It didn't care what they thought. It was like a lonely genius. Chapter 6:12. It could be said that the Hui tribe was the closest place to the giant mountain eagles. Perhaps no other tribe could see so many giant mountain eagles and observe their growth from birth. Xiao Xian's understanding of the giant mountain eagles was limited to what he heard from other people and his experience raising Cha-Cha. However, Cha-Cha had too many special characteristics and could not be considered a normal giant mountain eagle. Here, Xiao Xian could understand them better. Looking away, Xiao Xian no longer looked at the baby eagle that was still climbing up the wall. He walked into the cave with the shaman and chief of the Hui tribe. Inside the cave, there were illuminating crystals, water moon stones, and other glowing crystals. There was no need to rely on torches. Gu La told the others about Xiao Xian's intentions. Just like Gu La, the shaman and chief were shocked. They thought that Xiao Xian was here to ask for help, but they did not expect Xiao Xian to be here to invite them. Before winter, when our tribe's expedition team came back, they brought back a piece of news. They said they heard about the Flaming Horn Fleet and the Flaming River Trading Point. The chief of the Hui tribe recalled. At that time, they didn't believe that the Flaming Horns could live a good life. Building a trading point wasn't difficult for a tribe like theirs. That was why when they heard the news from the expedition team, they didn't take it to heart. They thought it was just an exaggeration. But now, since the Flaming Horns could send out an invitation to a banquet, it meant that they really had the ability to host a banquet. Perhaps the Flaming River Trading Point the expedition team mentioned was different from what they expected? At that time, the Hui tribe had thought about going to Yinjiao before winter to send some supplies. After all, Yinjiao had moved again and had nothing left. Winter would be difficult for them. However, when the messenger met the Yinjiao fleet on the way, they were rejected and only said that they could have a good life. They even invited the Hui tribe to visit the Flaming River Trading Point when they were free, and even gave them a map. At that time, winter was approaching, and the Hui tribe's team didn't go over. During this time, they also had something to discuss with the Yinjiao people. We mentioned you this morning, so we wanted to send a team to follow the map you gave us. I didn't expect you to be here already, the shaman of the Hui tribe said. Hearing this, Xiao Xian glanced at the people around him. In addition to the shaman and chief, as well as Gu La and He Shi, there were a few people he hadn't seen before. But he could guess from some of the subtle actions and words around him that these people's status in the Hui tribe should not be low. There was no phone here, so they couldn't inform them in advance. Xiao Xian didn't inform them when he came, which meant that these people didn't know that Xiao Xian was coming at this time. But these people were all gathered in the central meeting room of the Hui tribe. What happened? Xiao Xian asked. He didn't expect Xiao Xian to realize the problem so quickly. The shaman of the Hui tribe was stunned, and then turned his head to look at He Shi behind him. He Shi nodded slightly, and then fell behind, as if he was guarding here to prevent others from entering. Come with me. The shaman of the Hui tribe led Xiao Xian into the cave. There were many stone rooms of different sizes. Some were used to store things, some for discussion, and some for other purposes. Most of these stone rooms had wooden doors, except for the Yinjiao tribe who often used stone doors. Other tribes mostly used wooden doors. As for the stone door, it wasn't easy for ordinary people to open it. When they came to one of the doors, the shaman of the Hui tribe walked forward and untied a wooden bolt tied to the wooden door. He raised his hand and pushed the wooden door open. before the shaman of the Hui tribe opened the door, Xiao Xian had a very strange feeling. It didn't seem like there were people inside, but there was something similar to the power of the fire seed. It was very strange and different from the fire seed aura of other normal tribesmen. Even after the rain tribe and the drumming tribe merged their fire seeds, they didn't have this kind of aura. Even the robbers who merged their fire seeds early, and the people on the other side of the sea, didn't have this kind of aura. Different tribes had different fire seeds, so the aura of the fire seed was naturally different. Some gave people a burning feeling, like the fire seed of the Yinjiao, while others were cool, like the rain tribe and the drumming tribe. But the aura inside was completely different from the burning fire seed aura. It was also obviously different from the cool aura of the rain tribe and the drumming tribe. It had a strange kind of gloominess. From the aura of the fire seed, Xiao Xian could be sure that he had never seen a tribesman with this kind of aura. It was so cold that it didn't seem like a living person. Ka 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 ka. The wooden door was gradually pushed open. Without the thick wooden door, the aura was more obvious. It wasn't as strong as normal people, but Xiao Xian could clearly feel it. At the same time as the abnormal fire seed aura, there was also an unpleasant stench. The people in front moved aside, and Xiao Xian saw the situation inside. On the floor of the stone room, there was a flat plank about 3 meters long and 2 meters wide. And on the plank, there was a person lying on it. No, to be exact, it was just the outline of a person. It was obviously different from a normal person, and Xiao Xian couldn't hear his breathing. A dead person? Xiao Xian walked forward and approached the plank, carefully observing this strange person. That person looked shriveled. His exposed skin was greenish-black and had many fine wrinkles, like grapes that had been air-dried. Looking at his face, because of the shrinkage, his original appearance had become blurred. His eyes were deeply sunken, as if he had lost his eyeballs. This is... Xiao Xian looked at the Hui tribe shaman, and the others who looked serious. This is what we brought back when we went to the desert to investigate. The Hui tribe's chief said, because they had eagles that could fly long distances. It was more convenient for the people of the Hui tribe to go to many places. Last year, they heard about the changes in the desert, and couldn't help but send people to check it out. As a result, they met some strange people. At that time, we lost a lot of people, and in the end, we could only bring back this one. Thinking of this, the Hui tribe's chief felt a knot in his chest. Those strange people in the desert were too difficult to deal with. They don't know pain, fear, or life. They are very cruel. The Hui tribe's chief said. Xiao Xian also remembered what Yang Sui said about the desert. Those monsters might be referring to this one lying here. Was it like this when you brought it back? Xiao Xian pointed at the person on the plank and asked the Hui tribe's chief. There are some changes, but it's more or less like this. But it started to rot after we brought it back. Even if we put it in an ice cave, it's useless. Now it's rotting faster and faster. The Hui tribe's chief was distressed. If other Yinjiao warriors came here, they might not say it so easily. But since it was Xiao Xian, the great elder of Yinjiao, they didn't hide it from him. We tried all kinds of methods but still couldn't stop it. Every tribe had a way to store meat, but it was useless on this person. The person was still rotting, and it was rotting faster and faster. At this rate, it wouldn't be long before there was only a pile of rotten meat left. No wonder Xiao Xian felt confused when he looked at this person, because it had already started to rot. The Hui tribe shaman sighed helplessly. Not only that, I also feel a strange fire seed. It's not strong, but it's there. But compared to when he was first brought here, the fire seed in him is weaker. The shaman was more sensitive to fire seed energy than anyone else. Even if the Hui tribe couldn't feel it, he could still feel it. Did Rock Hill City make them? Xiao Xian asked. I think so. Other than Rock Hill City, I can't think of anyone else who could do this. In the desert, only Rock Hill City had the ability to make these monsters. Now we can only hope that these monsters aren't used by Rock Hill City to deal with the tribesmen. The Hui tribe shaman was worried. The tribesmen had always treated the slave masters as their class enemy. They were always on guard against anything the slave masters did. They always felt that everything the slave masters did was a threat to the tribesmen. But the slave masters had many things that the tribesmen desired, such as gold tools and skills. Maybe Rock Hill City made them to deal with the people on the other side of the sea. Xiaoxian said. The people of Rock Hill City have a grudge with the people on the other side of the sea. Also, Rock Hill City should have been prepared for the disaster. Everything they did was in preparation for the disaster. Since the Hui tribe didn't hide anything from Xiaoxian, Xiaoxian also shared some information. The Hui tribe knew that half of the people in Yinjiao came from the other side of the sea, but they didn't know about the grudges between the slave masters. Xiaoxian could only briefly explain what he knew and his own guesses. As soon as they heard that there were more slave masters on the other side of the sea, and that the two continents were closer, the tribesmen's first reaction was to be on high alert. It was as if they reflexively raised their spines. But after listening to Xiaoxian, it seemed like the slave masters on both sides had a grudge against each other. This was good. They hoped that the two sides would fight. That would be a war between the slave masters. The tribesmen wouldn't participate. Very good, very good. Thinking of this, the people of the Hui tribe felt a little comforted. Xiaoxian stayed at the Hui tribe for 2 days, then rode on Cha-Cha, and left for the Tianshan tribe. Xiaoxian wasn't as friendly towards the Tianshan tribe. Both sides were on guard against each other. He only went over to send an invitation. As for whether the Tianshan tribe would go, he didn't care. The animal skin scroll he used as an invitation wasn't as exquisite as the one he gave to the Hui tribe. After settling the matters on the grasslands, Xiaoxian didn't waste any time and went straight back. On the way back, he met a few Yinjiao warriors who went to invite the other big tribes in the central region. Just as Xiaoxian was thinking about the strange people in the desert and the upcoming Flaming River Trading Point feast, invitations were sent out one by one in the Flaming River region. Although the news of Yinjiao hosting a feast at the Flaming River Trading Point had already spread, and some tribes who knew about it, if they wanted to enter the heart of the Flaming River Trading Point, they needed an invitation. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to get a seat and would have to find an empty spot. Even if they could eat and drink to their heart's content, they wouldn't be able to live up to their reputation. Those who weren't thick-skinned enough would feel embarrassed. That was why during this period of time, many tribesmen were looking forward to receiving an invitation from Yinjiao. Somewhere in the Flaming River region, in an inconspicuous mountain, people could be seen peeking out from a narrow crevice. Some were looking up at the sky, some were looking into the forest. Following this narrow crevice, they arrived at a spacious area where the drumming tribe lived. Other than those who went out to look for food, and those who patrolled the area, most of the people stayed in the tribe. They were just a small tribe with only a few hundred people, so they didn't stand out at all. In the past, the drumming tribe lived very cautiously, like mice hiding in the ground. The number of times they showed their faces outside was much less than the number of times they washed their faces. If it was in the past, they wouldn't go out unless they could. But now they were looking forward to receiving an invitation to go out. The trade before winter had given them a taste of the benefits. For the first time, the drumming tribe realized that they could live so comfortably, and that they could obtain more resources through this method. The chief of the drumming tribe, Abuli, sat in front of his house after circling the area 20 times for the day. He opened a dried oval fruit that was about half an arm's length. The dried and crispy fruit's outer shell was easily twisted open, revealing some white, dry, and fluff inside. If he blew gently, he could even blow up some of the fluff. Abuli scooped out the white fluff from the dried fruit and rolled it into a ball in his hand. Then, he picked up a crystal that was almost as thick as a person and placed it on the wooden rack. He used the white fluff that he scooped out earlier to wipe the crystal. The originally dry white wool was wiped on the rough parts of the crystal. Gradually, the white wool seemed to be soaked in water, and the rough parts of the crystal became very smooth. This was a method discovered by the ancestors of the drumming tribe. It had been passed down until now, and this method was only known to the drumming tribe. In order to use these crystals to exchange for more resources, Abuli decided to polish these crystals to make them even brighter. Perhaps the people from Yinjiao would be able to give him more things if they looked better. Not only Abuli, But the other members of the drumming tribe were also doing the same thing. How could they not be enthusiastic when they could exchange for resources? While he was wiping, Abuli suddenly heard a yell. Ayo-yo. Because there were many mountains in the surroundings, it was difficult to distinguish the direction of the sound. It was as if the sound was coming from all directions. However, the people who heard the shouts could easily tell the correct direction from these distracting echoes. Abuli did not care about wiping the crystal. He threw away the white fluff in his hand and ran towards the direction of the sound. The other members of the drumming tribe also stopped what they were doing. They no longer had the mood to wipe the crystal. They looked nervously and expectantly in the direction Abuli left. Not long after, Abuli rushed in with a big laugh. His big feet hooked onto the vines as he swung towards the tribe. He waved an animal skin roll in his hand. This is it. This is it. Wow, it's even made from fearsome beast skin. It's really made from fearsome beast skin. As he spoke, Abuli suddenly stopped. He hung upside down on the mountain wall covered in vines and sniffed the animal skin roll in his hand. This must be the skin from a fearsome beast's buttocks. Chapter 6:13. Other than being good at finding crystals, the drumming tribesmen had another skill. They could tell which part of the beast the hide came from just by smelling it. Others could tell by looking or touching, but they could tell by smelling it. Their accuracy was at least 70%. When they traded with the Flaming Horns at the Flaming River trading point, Abuli didn't use this method because the beast hides they traded were too big. He could tell where they were at a glance, so he didn't need to use this method to identify the beast hides. Most tribesmen liked the hide from the back of beasts because it was more elastic, and the hide on the buttocks was harder. If tribesmen who hunted fearsome beasts often placed a small piece of hide there, they might be able to tell by looking at it. However, to the drumming tribesmen who rarely came into contact with fearsome beasts, they could only guess by smelling it. I wonder if Yinjiao specially selected the hide when they gave it to us, Abuli muttered unhappily. If the Yinjiao people who made the hide knew about this, they would definitely cry foul. They did not think too much when they made the hide this time. They just cut it into smaller pieces and made it into an invitation card. Who would have thought that the drumming tribesman could tell where the hide came from just by smelling it? Although the hide in his hand was from a fearsome beast's buttocks, Abuli still carefully rolled it up and kept it close to his body. This was a pass to eat and drink at the Flaming River trading point. Without this, they would not be able to eat and drink. After his excitement died down, Abuli waved his hand and waved away the people who came over to look at the pass. He thought of a problem. There would definitely be many tribes going there, and the drumming tribe was just one of them. Under these circumstances, if they received the invitation, they would have to prepare some gifts. The notes left behind by their ancestors mentioned something similar. Abuli had specially looked through them when he came back from the Flaming River trading point during winter. He had already thought of gifts. There were many crystals hidden in the caves owned by all the chiefs. One of them was glowing, so he could bring it over. After making up his mind, Abuli led his men into the cave and brought out the light purple crystal. It was as tall as a person, and one could see it shining brightly in the dark. Of course, among his collection, the most beautiful and valuable things were still kept in his own hands. He would not give them away just like that. The one that he decided to take out as a gift already made many people feel the pinch. How many resources could he exchange for with that? He actually gave it away as a gift for the tribe's previous exchange. Although Abuli felt the pinch, he knew that this was the best course of action. Although their tribe was small and did not interact with many people, they still understood some principles. When they met with other tribes in public, they represented the face of their tribe. No matter how greedy he was, as the leader of the tribe, there were some bottom lines that he couldn't cross. They could embarrass themselves, but they couldn't embarrass the entire drumming tribe. Their deceased ancestors were watching them. He had received the invitation and prepared the gifts. Now there was only one thing left for Abuli to do. All right, who's coming with me this time? Abuli looked around. As soon as Abuli finished speaking, the crowd burst into an uproar. Me. I'll go. Leader, look at me. Me too. My feet are the biggest. Of course I'll go. Nonsense, the leader's feet are the biggest. Chief, he's provoking you. Beat him up. Bullshit. When did I say that my feet are bigger than the chief's? I mean, other than the chief's. Chief, he wants to compete with you. The people of the drumming tribe obviously had bigger feet than other tribes. Their toes were also very special. They were long and very flexible, as if they were their second pair of hands. Moreover, in the drumming tribe, big feet were the real deal. Many people in the drumming tribe competed with each other, since they were young. Whoever had bigger feet would be the boss, and those with smaller feet would be the little brother. This was because many times in the drumming tribe, people with bigger feet were much faster than those with smaller toes when climbing and shuttling through the forest. When they encountered danger, they had a higher chance of escaping successfully. The people of the drumming tribe did not like to fight, but they liked to compete with their feet to show off their bigger feet. Hence, at times like this, the rules were brought out again. The people with bigger feet were shouting loudly and confidently. Those who were just complaining about why they had to give gifts immediately forgot about everything else and waved their hands at Abuli. Those who were standing at the back of the crowd and couldn't squeeze and jumped up and down. Some even stood on their heads and waved their big feet, hoping that Abuli would notice them and pick them over. Some people didn't like to interact with strangers and didn't like to leave the mountains. They liked to stay in the corner of their tribe all day long. If Abuli brought people out to trade, they might not be interested, but this time was different. They were going out to eat. They heard that they could eat as much as they wanted, wild beast meat, fearsome beast meat, etc. They had everything. How could they miss out on such a free meal? Abuli was in a dilemma. To him, other than the people who often went out to trade with him, he still had to bring some food. TSK, in the past, when he said he wanted to go out to trade, this group of people acted like they had met a beast. They came up with all sorts of excuses and didn't even want to take a step out. But now they were all so enthusiastic. Abuli squatted on a half-polished crystal and scratched his messy hair. He slapped his thigh and said, "How about this?" The people who were arguing until their faces were red suddenly stopped. The entire place quieted down and everyone looked at Abuli, waiting for his decision. "You guys!" Abuli pointed a finger at the people around him and said, "You guys fight. The winner will follow me." Those who were too weak would be embarrassed if they went out, and strength wasn't limited to the size of their feet. Besides, Abuli felt that the more capable a person was, the more they could eat. There was a limit to the number of people he could bring. Since that was the case, he had to bring those who could eat a lot. That way he wouldn't lose out. Their ancestors had said that they could eat anything, but they couldn't lose out. "How can you use this method to choose?" One of the Ji tribesmen shouted. The next moment, he kicked away the person beside him who was still in a daze. Because of this, the people around them also reacted and started fighting. Abuli squatted on a crystal next to them and looked over. He had a serious look on his face as he scanned every corner with his critical eyes. Every time Abuli looked over, the people over there would fight with extra vigor. While the Ji tribe was preparing to head to the Flaming River trading point, the other tribes along the river had also received invitations from the Yinjiao people. The tribes who went to the Flaming River trading point before winter were all invited. The Ji tribe was of course on the list. Plus, they had crystals. The Rain tribe, Drumming tribe, Pu tribe and other tribes that Yinjiao were familiar with had also received invitations. As for the other tribes that hid well, they still had to spend time looking for them. Days passed. Xiao Xian had already returned to the Yinjiao headquarters with the other people, who had gone further away, to deliver the invitations. Xiao Xian had also told the others about the strange person that the Hui tribe had brought back to the Yinjiao headquarters. However, to the Yinjiao people at this time, they didn't care about the desert. They would let the slave masters settle their own problems. The Yinjiao people still had to prepare for the first banquet after 1,000 years. The wine and other drinks had been brewed long ago. Xiao Xian had supervised the production. After returning from the grasslands, he went to take a look again. Based on his own requirements, it was still a long way off. After all, it was mass-produced and the conditions were limited. Even a small mistake in the middle could cause a qualitative change. However, the standards here were already not bad. At least, many Yinjiao people thought it was good enough. They also prepared a lot of vicious beast meat. Some of them couldn't be stored for a long time, so they tied them up with their last breath, just like when they were on the other side of the sea. Those vicious beasts that were less aggressive and didn't pose much of a threat were kept first. When it was time to eat, they would slaughter them. "Is everything ready?" Xiaoxian asked Zheng Luo. While he was gone, Zheng Luo and Ao, the two retired chiefs, had been in charge. Because the banquet was held in the Flaming River trading point, most of the decorations were done there. The two chiefs, Duokong, Ta and the rest all lived in the Flaming River trading point, so they didn't have to travel back and forth every day. The bottles and jars of gold that had been found in the Wanshi tribe were also taken out one by one. The Flaming Horns originally planned to reforge these useless things, but after they decided to hold the banquet, they didn't do it for the time being. Instead, they cleaned these metal wares and prepared to use them to store things. Although they weren't very practical, they could still be used to show off when necessary. Rare items were expensive. On this mainland, gold was still very rare because there were no core seeds here. The only core seeds were brought over from the other side of the sea by the people in the desert. There were no core seeds on this continent, so before the battle in the desert, most of the tribesmen had never seen gold before. It was only after the reshuffling of the cards in the desert and the escaping slave masters brought gold out that some of the tribesmen saw those shiny gold items. However, there were still many tribesmen, especially tribes like the drumming tribes, who stayed in their tribes all year round. Even if they went out, they only moved around nearby and didn't like to interact with outsiders. That was why they had never seen gold before. Other than the rare gold, Zheng Luo and Ao decorated the banquet hall with Yinjiao characteristics. Xiaoxian, who was already mentally prepared, wasn't surprised when he walked into the Flaming River trading point. The main venue was still in the heart of the Flaming River trading point. There was a horizontal U-shaped area with tall stone buildings on both sides. Large fangs hung on the walls of the stone buildings. The skulls of the beasts that had been boiled were polished until they were smooth and shiny. When yang guang shone on them, they reflected a dazzling light. Only the beasts' mouths were mostly left untouched. Even the blood stains on them were not wiped away. Some of the blood stains on the fangs were even washed off during the boiling process. However, after they were moved over and decorated, Ao purposely got people to wipe the remaining blood on the fangs again. Because they were all too familiar with hunting beasts, they wiped the blood on the fangs naturally. It didn't look like someone had painted the fangs on them. At first glance, it looked like a fierce beast that had just fought in the forest and was about to bite them. Some of the beast heads hanging on the walls weren't boiled. These were the beasts that had been hunted recently. After they were processed, their fur was preserved and their eyeballs were remade with resin. The Rain tribesmen helped them make these. They were good at making fake things. Perhaps they hadn't discovered this skill in the past. Now that they were forced by life, the Rain tribesmen picked up the skills of their ancestors and discovered this skill. The fur of ferocious beasts was tougher than that of ordinary beasts. Even if it was boiled, as long as it was not boiled for a long time, it would still preserve a large amount of fur. Therefore, the head of a beast that had not been boiled and only had its external appearance preserved most of its skin. Even the steel needle-like whiskers were well preserved and could be replaced after being removed. According to one of the warriors who processed the beast heads, he cut off a whisker on one of the beast heads. Before he replaced it, he used the whisker to poke his hand. If it weren't for the thick skin of the totemic warriors, it would have pierced a bloody hole in his hand. Other than these beast heads, there were some beast bones embedded in the stone walls on both sides of the long U-shaped hall. A long, winding skeleton of a reptilian beast was embedded in the stone wall. This was installed by Zheng Luo himself. These were the fearsome beasts he hunted himself. The small bones weren't complete, but the main ones were pieced together and embedded in the stone wall. They weren't pieced together rigidly, but restored to how the fearsome beasts looked when he hunted them. Even without the skin and muscles, only the white bones were left. But just these bones were enough to show the danger of hunting. The fearsome beast's aura lingered on the white bones. People who were close to the bones could clearly feel the murderous aura in the bones. Ordinary ferocious beasts would only have bones left after eating them, but ferocious beasts were like murderous weapons that still had a murderous aura. Just by being placed there, it was enough to make people feel a bone-chilling cold. If people in peacetime came here, they would probably be scared out of their wits. But in this kind of environment, this was the embodiment of high class. Xiao Xian helped with the remaining unfinished details. While Yin Jiao was busy, on the mainland, all the tribes who received Yin Jiao's invitation formed a group. They followed the simple but clear map on the back of the invitation and set off towards the trading point. Chief, how capable do you think the Yin Jiao people are? They just went through the cataclysm not long ago, and now they're setting up a Flaming River trading point. Where is this Flaming River trading point? Why haven't we heard of it before? Chu Su held the invitation in his hand and looked at the map on the back. The chief of the Mang tribe glanced at Chu Su, but didn't say anything. He was also curious. How did Yin Jiao manage to establish themselves so quickly? It shouldn't be much, right? It definitely can't compare to our trading point. Someone from the Eight Limbs tribe heard Chu Su and said. The Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe both received Yin Jiao's invitation this time. They were both surprised and curious. Flaming River trading point? Flaming River? Where was it? Chapter 614. Other than the Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe, a few other tribes from the central region also set off. When it came to banquets, experienced tribes knew that they had to compete at banquets. Battles without killing intent were everywhere. It wasn't always a battle of strength. There were many ways to suppress the other party, such as clothing, accessories, tools, and so on. In terms of clothing, each tribe had its own characteristics. It didn't have to be ferocious beast skin or smooth silk. For example, the Mang tribe preferred to wear clothes made of plants that were similar to the color of bamboo. Their accessories were also made of bamboo or jade. The jade that symbolized their status was also different. People from other tribes could tell their status in the Mang tribe by looking at the jade ornaments they wore. But this time, all the people from the Mang tribe had jade ornaments above the half-ring level on their waists. That was to say, this time, the Mang tribe's team was basically made up of senior totem warriors, and their status in the tribe was not low. The Mang tribe produced a lot of jade. Many people had imitated the shape of the jade ornaments that the Mang tribesmen wore. However, the jade ornaments worn by the real Mang tribesmen looked simple, but they were very special. They were not carefully carved, but there were clear green lines like bamboo. This kind of jade was called Mang jade, and it was exclusive to the Mang tribesmen. Even if other tribesmen obtained this kind of Mang jade through some means, they would not dare to take it out in the open, because the Mang tribesmen would not allow it. The Eight Limbs tribe, who were allied with the Mang tribe, wore their tribe's famous silk clothing. For this trip to the Flaming River, they all wore clothes that they didn't usually wear. This was the only way to show off their status and to compete with the other big tribes. This was a clash of the tribe's pride. The Mang tribesmen mostly rode on horses, but there were also a few strange beasts. Their fur was dark brown, black, or white. If Xiao Xian was here, he would be shocked to see that the Mang tribe's leaders were riding on beasts that looked like pandas. The Eight Limbs tribesmen mostly rode on large spiders. These large spiders had different colors, long and short fur, thick and thin legs, and even the number of eyes. Some of them looked like a ball of fur, while others looked like they were pieced together by a few bamboo poles and would be blown away by the wind. Either of these two tribes would be very eye-catching. Now that they were traveling together, they were even more eye-catching. Wherever they passed, almost everyone who saw them would be curious. Where were the people of the Mang tribe and the people of the Eight Limbs tribe going? Moreover, it was in such a formation? It didn't seem like they were going to war. What was their purpose? Those who couldn't suppress their curiosity and had nothing better to do followed from a distance, wanting to find out the answer. If they followed too closely, they were afraid of being caught by the people of the Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe, so they could only follow behind at a certain distance. The distance from the central region to the Flaming River region was quite far. Along the way, more and more curious people gathered, but no one dared to go up and ask. Those who were brave enough joined the tailing team. Both tribes knew about this, but they weren't interested in the people behind them. Plus, they actually wanted to bring more people over to watch the show. If Yinjiao really wasn't doing well, then they could have more people to help spread the news. In most tribesmen's hearts, the central region was definitely the most prosperous. The trading point was also the most prosperous in the central region, and had the most variety of goods. People from the borders of the mainland would travel thousands of miles to the trading point there to trade. If they could prove that the Flaming River trading point was just a small and messy place, no one would go there even if Yinjiao did their best to spread the news. It would save them a lot of effort. The Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe even met the Longboat tribe along the way. However, the Longboat tribe people were all on boats, so the two sides only traveled for a short distance before splitting up again. There were shortcuts on land, and there were shortcuts on land. You can use boats at the Flaming River trading point? After parting ways with the Longboat tribe, some of the Mang tribesmen were puzzled. Isn't it called the Flaming River trading point? If there's a river, of course you can use boats, Huang Yi said with a frown. He didn't believe that Yinjiao could establish a foothold in such a short time. Even if Yinjiao could establish a foothold and start a new life, he didn't think that the Flaming River trading point would be better than the few large trading points in the central region. Perhaps all of this was just Yinjiao's way of making their presence known. I wonder if Yinjiao will take out all their money this time? Someone laughed. Who cares? When the time comes, the Yinjiao people will be the ones worrying. We just have to eat and drink to our heart's content. Someone from the Eight Limbs tribe also replied. From the central region where most of the tribes lived, they walked along the route. There were very few people around, and sometimes they wouldn't even see a single outsider after a whole day. The surrounding soil wasn't very good either, especially the places far away from the river. The soil was very hard, and not suitable for planting. There were only some barren hills with weeds growing in the vicinity. There weren't even any trees that could bear fruit. Even if there were, they were mostly short and had sparse leaves. No wonder there weren't any tribes living here. Desolation. This was what everyone who passed through this place was thinking. At this time, the Mang and Eight Limbs tribesmen couldn't help but feel proud. Their ancestors were indeed good at finding good places. The soil in their own territories was much better than here. However, gradually there was no obvious change in the terrain, but the landscape began to change. The surrounding trees gradually increased, taller and denser. The surrounding mountains were no longer monotonous weeds, but lush forests. The further they went, the denser the forests on the mountains. Even in places far away from water sources, the forests were more full of green vitality than before. There were some people moving around nearby. They were probably from a small tribe, hiding in the woods on the mountain. This place seems pretty good. Chusa casually plucked a leaf from a shrub and peeled it open to check the moisture content. Although the soil wasn't very fertile, they could still plant some crops if they wanted to. It couldn't compare to the farms in the central region, but it was enough to sustain a small tribe. The others didn't think much of it. In their eyes, this place was far worse than the farms in their own tribes. Chief, there are some people on the mountain who have been following us for a while. Should we go and check? Huang Yi asked the chief of the Mang tribe. No need. The chief of the Mang tribe didn't care and raised his hand. He didn't care about people from small tribes and didn't think they would be a threat to their team. In the nearby forest, Abuli and his people were shocked to see the team passing by the valley. Who are those people? Someone asked. How would I know? Abuli pulled at his animal skin clothes anxiously and wiped the sweat on his forehead. Before they came, Abuli spent 2 days choosing clothes. In the end, he chose a piece of animal skin he exchanged from Yinjiao and asked his wife to sew it into clothes. In the drumming tribe, the best clothing material was the fearsome beast skin they exchanged from Yinjiao last winter. Fearsome beast skin wasn't like wild beast skin and was much more difficult to cut. Abuli's wife found a few more people to help. Abuli, His wife and the shaman of the drumming tribe all wore animal skin clothes and headed to the Flaming River trading point. However, the animal skins that Abueli had chosen at that time were all furs with thick fur, and not smooth or short fur. With the current weather, winter had long passed, and it was indeed very hot to wear, but Abueli had no choice. After picking and choosing, only these furs caught his eye. Originally, Abueli wanted to wear these fearsome beast skin clothes to the Flaming River feast to show off. From what he knew, many tribes in this area had never seen fearsome beast skin before. But who would have thought that when they were heading towards the Flaming River trading point, they would see a group of people with luxurious equipment passing through the valley. The other party's attire and carriage were so much better than the drumming tribes. Their aura was also much stronger than the other tribes in the area. Compared to them, the drumming tribes people were nothing. When they saw this team, they didn't even have the thought of robbing them. This must be the legendary powerful tribe from the central region, right? There was always someone better than you. The drumming tribe was still too narrow-minded. Abueli thought about it, and took out a vine-woven bag from his back. He opened it layer by layer, and took out a few crystal necklaces. He put them all on his neck. These were the backup necklaces he brought with him when he left the tribe. He wanted to give them away as gifts and pretend to be rich, but now it seemed like he should wear them first to boost his courage. This is much better. Abueli looked at the sparkling crystal necklaces and nodded in satisfaction. His confidence had increased by a few levels. The Mang tribe and Eight Limbs tribe who were hurrying on their journey didn't know how traumatized the people who were spying on them were. Night gradually fell, and the team found a place to rest. Beside the fire, the chief of the Mang tribe took out the map on the back of the invitation letter. He looked at the 2 moons drawn on the top of the map. That was the time of the feast given by Yinjiao. He looked at the size of the 2 moons and gestured between them. Then he looked up at the sky. The shape of the 2 moons in the night sky was similar to the one drawn on the map. We can make it. This was the conclusion of the Mang tribe's chief. We should be able to reach the Flaming River trading point tomorrow, Huang Yi said. Based on the rough terrain, the distribution of the mountains and the position of the river, they were very close to the destination marked on the map. They should be able to reach it before the time given by Yinjiao. I wonder what kind of food Yinjiao prepared. Did they really prepare a lot of fearsome beast meat? Chu Se looked at the beast roasting over the fire and felt even hungrier. Who knows? A warrior from the Eight Limbs tribe yawned. They regretted coming with the team. Not only was the journey long, if Yinjiao prepared some strange food, would they bite the bullet and eat it or not? They heard that the food in the remote areas was very strange. They wondered how the barbaric Yinjiao would prepare it. Sai, why think so much? We'll know tomorrow. You're right. Under the night sky, the team gradually quieted down. There was only the crackling of the fire and the snoring of a few mounts. The next day, the team set off again. Just as Huang Yi and the rest expected, when it was close to noon, they saw a flat road that was obviously man-made. There was a stone tablet on the side of the road with the words, Flaming River Trading Point written on it. There was an arrow below the words, pointing in the direction of the road. This is interesting, Chu Se said. Keep going. The chief of the Mang tribe pointed in front of them. There were people looking in their direction. They should be Yinjiao people. The road was wide and sturdy. Even giant beasts could walk on it steadily. They walked along the road. Not long after, someone in the team suddenly exclaimed, "Look, what's that?" The people in the team looked forward. In their field of vision, there was a tall stone house in the distance, higher than the height of the forest. Because most of the trees in front of them were cut down, there were no obstacles. They could clearly see the gray-white building with its head sticking out. Not long after, a wall appeared in front of them. They didn't care about the wall made of stone, but the painting on the wall made all of them excited. It wasn't that the paintings were scary, but the style and color of the paintings were very eye-catching. The sudden appearance of colors in the green forest attracted a lot of attention. Unlike the walls in other places, Yinjiao's wall was smoother. The protruding parts of the wall were shaved off, and the depressions were filled in. So the wall became a good drawing board. The paintings on it were more detailed, and had more variations. There were many people in the paintings on the outer walls. Due to the collective stylization of the tribal mindset, most of the paintings of the tribes had one thing in common. When drawing people, the shapes of the figures would omit the beauty of the individual, but at the same time, it would produce and strengthen the overall impact. This was especially obvious when the paintings were for outsiders. People from big tribes like the Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe could be said to be experienced and knowledgeable. Ordinary paintings wouldn't surprise them so much, but the paintings on the wall in front of them gave them a different feeling. The dark brown paint painted the land, with some people lined up on it. Although the faces of the people in the paintings were basically the same due to the collective stylization, their clothes and weapons were slightly different. There were stone ropes, swords, spears, axes and sticks, and some strange tools, like broken knives, which they had never seen before. The posture of the people lined up on the painting was solemn. Set off by the flame-shaped streamline, there was a specific rhythm and rendering feeling. Because the wall was smoother, there were more places to display the painting skills. The lines of the paintings also changed from hard to soft to thick. Under the full color filling, it looked more vivid. Some of the paintings were decorated with rare golden paint to outline the lines or fill in the blanks. Among the plants in the paintings, there were some painted in gold and purple, but most people who saw them didn't recognize those plants. If it was in other tribes, the paintings with different thicknesses would look awkward and unnatural. But here, because of the combination of dots, lines, and surfaces, there was more beauty. In the smooth and delicate painting, it didn't lose the wildness of the tribal style. Those were only a few groups of paintings. There were more paintings behind. Between every two groups of paintings, there were some red flame-shaped decorative patterns. In the flames, there were obvious double-horn patterns, and the flame patterns that connected the groups of paintings looked natural. The flame body's spiral and arc were combined together, giving people a feeling of flow, and could be smoothly placed between each group of paintings. There were not only paintings of people, but also paintings of ferocious beasts. All kinds of ferocious beasts that had never been seen before were shown on the wall in the primitive tribal style. In addition to the combination of lines and decorative patterns, the impact of colors, and the exaggerated transformation techniques, people who saw it couldn't help but feel a sense of fear at the moment when they saw it at first sight. On the gray-white wall, the combination of large paintings and colors, set off by the surrounding green mountains and clear water, gave people a more obvious visual conflict. It could be said that every person who came here for the first time was deeply impressed by the paintings on the wall. Most of these paintings were made by Xiaoxian. Of course, Xiaoxian could make more detailed and complex paintings, and more vivid, but that would be beyond the acceptable range of this period. Here, the mainstream was this kind of primitive tribal style. If it was a little more than that, it would be called improvement and innovation. But if it was a complete change of style, it would be completely out of the mainstream and acceptable range of this period. Not to mention that people from other tribes couldn't appreciate it. Even people from the Yinjiao tribe would feel abrupt when they saw it. They might even think that Xiaoxian's aesthetic was abnormal. The result was just as Xiaoxian expected. People from the Yinjiao tribe were very satisfied with the final result on the wall. In the past few days, people from other tribes who came one after another would stop when they saw these paintings, including the teams from the Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe. What kind of tree is this painting? I don't know. What about that? I've never seen it before. And that? Oh, I know that one over there. That's the crop Yinjiao discovered before. What's it called? Cabbage? Yes, that cabbage. We saw Yinjiao planting it when we went to the murderous forest during the winter. The warriors of the Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe in the team were pointing at those paintings and discussing. At the front of the team, the chiefs from the Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe looked at the tall wall in front of them and the stone tower in the middle of the trading point. They felt very conflicted. This was Yinjiao's new settlement? This was the so-called Flaming River trading point that Yinjiao built? It should be different from what they expected. What was that saying again? I'm relieved to know that you're not doing well. Similarly, they were depressed to know that Yinjiao was doing well. How could they not be doing well if they could build a place like this? Chapter 6:15. At the Flaming River trading point, there were Yinjiao warriors in charge of reception. These people would verify the authenticity of the invitations and lead them into the trading point. They would bring them to a designated area to rest. Xiao Xian had already told them about this. They knew which area each tribe was assigned to, even if they couldn't remember. As long as they remembered the general location, they would be able to see the signs when they arrived. The person who led the Mang tribe and Eight Limbs tribe and was Kuan Tu, who was on duty today. He looked at the Mang tribe and Eight Limbs tribe and roughly estimated the number of people. Then, he led them into the trading point. Because there were more teams arriving, the number of guards increased. Those who weren't let in by the Yinjiao and didn't have invitations would be killed by the guards if they tried to force their way in. At times like this, the Yinjiao people wouldn't show any mercy. When they were outside the trading point, the Mang tribe and Eight Limbs tribe could already hear the sounds of people inside the trading point and smell the aroma of food wafting out. Before them, many people who were invited had already arrived. At the entrance of the trading point, if you walked in a little, you would see two large stone trays by the side of the road. On the trays were some roasted food. When the Mang tribe and Eight Limbs tribe passed by, someone happened to be putting food on the trays. Freshly roasted food that was still steaming hot was piled on the trays. The aroma of the food wafted towards the incoming teams. The food on the trays in the trading point is all edible. You can take whatever you want, Kuan Tu explained. The Mang tribe and Eight Limbs tribe were hesitant. They hadn't eaten anything on the way here after rushing for so long. Now that they smelled the food, they were hungry too. The food they ate in the morning had already been digested. They could even hear their stomachs moving. It was fine if the trays were filled with other things, but now, all the food on the trays were filled with worms. It was not that they never ate these things, but they thought that they had already left the primitive state of savagery. Other than when they were on a mission, or when they were forced to a certain extent, they were more particular about the food they ate. They rarely ate insects, especially for those who had some status in the tribe. Their daily food was usually carefully prepared. But when they came here, the first thing they saw was a large plate of roasted insects. Even though he had mentally prepared himself for this, he was still rather displeased when he actually encountered it. If Yinjiao only planned to use these insects as the main course of the banquet, then they could only laugh at Yinjiao and turn around to leave. They did not want to stay for a moment longer, because it was not worth it. I didn't come all the way here to eat worms with you. After taking two more, they used their armpits to pick up more. As a result, when the drumming tribesmen passed by, the small mountain of roasted insects on the tray was reduced by half. As he followed the Yinjiao warrior who led the way, Abuli chewed on the insects. He thought to himself that when he left after the banquet, he would exchange some of these insects with the Yinjiao. Insects should be cheaper than beast meat. He should be able to exchange a crystal of the same size for quite a few insects. The Yinjiao people were not stingy with these insects. In fact, these insects were all swatted down by the guards in the fields with giant fly swatters. After spring came and flowers bloomed, the flourishing crops in the fields attracted many flying insects. Especially recently, when the crops in the fields grew better, they attracted even more flying insects. Every day, the flying insects that were swatted down by the warriors could pile up into a small mountain. The green ducks were fattened up by the feeding, and recently, even the female ducks had started laying eggs. The Flaming Horn tribesmen had eaten these insects before, and they felt that it was a good dish. They wouldn't embarrass themselves if they sold them in the trading point. Xiao Xian even joked, "This can be considered a seasonal dish." After eating one insect, Abuli looked around and realized that compared to the last time he was here, the trading point had changed quite a bit. The original wooden buildings had been replaced with stone houses, and they looked sturdier and taller. Many of the houses had been painted with colors, and the stone tablets by the roadside were carved into the shape of ferocious beasts. They stood there, adding a sense of fierceness to the trading point. The Ji tribe was arranged to be near other smaller tribes in the Little Flaming River area. They were slightly further away from the center of the trading point. Even if they were arranged to be near the center of the trading point, they would not be willing. That place was filled with more powerful tribes, and they would feel uncomfortable there. Just like the fire seed, they would not be able to sit or stand still. Yinjiao's arrangement was exactly what they wanted. When can we start eating? No, when will the banquet start? It's already time. Abuli pointed at the 2 moons drawn on the invitation letter and asked the Yinjiao warrior, who led them here. It's either tomorrow or the day after, because there are still tribes that have not arrived yet. The shaman and the chief said to wait a little longer, and they will inform you when the time comes, the Yinjiao warrior said. So slow. Abuli complained about the tribes that dragged on, but when he thought about how they didn't have to worry about food here, his gloominess disappeared. He thought of something, then pointed at the surroundings and asked, "Will the banquet be held here?" "Of course not." The Yinjiao warrior who led them here grinned, then pointed at the center of the trading point. "The banquet will be held at the Flaming River Castle." Abuli looked over from the window. The tall stone building they saw outside the trading point should be the so-called Flaming River Castle. It wasn't finished last winter, and now it was complete. He estimated the size of the Flaming River Castle in his mind and realized that it was about the same size as the Ji tribe's place. He was too nervous the last time he came here, so he didn't take a closer look. Now that he thought about it, he realized this fact. On the roof of the tallest building in the Flaming River Castle, there was a huge flag with 2 flaming horns on it. The flag fluttered in the wind. Chapter 6:16. The banquet didn't make the people who had already arrived wait for long. Due to the communication barrier, they couldn't tell if the tribes who were invited didn't come on time because they didn't want to come, or because of other reasons. The banquet wouldn't be delayed because of these reasons. Regardless of whether other people would complain, the Yinjiao people wouldn't treat themselves as fools either. There were so many people who came, and in order to make this banquet a success, a lot of the food in the trading point was free. Therefore, the amount of food consumed every day was huge. Yinjiao wanted to hold a banquet similar to a show-off banquet to show off their wealth, but they didn't want to be like those people who overestimated themselves and insisted on holding a show-off banquet. They ate until they were poor. Therefore, a day later, the specific time and location of the banquet were announced. The Longboat tribe's fleet finally arrived the night before the banquet. Their fleet encountered some trouble along the way. There were some obstacles in the river, so they arrived later than expected. Luckily, they made it in time. The 5 central tribes and the Lu tribe, who used to have a good relationship with them, were all present. It was already night when the Longboat tribe arrived, so they couldn't see many things clearly in the trading point. It wasn't until the next morning when they walked out of the house that the Flaming Horn tribe had arranged for them and saw everything around them that they took a deep breath. This is the trading point. Wasn't the trading point just a designated place for people to display what they wanted to trade? Why did they build so many houses? They heard that this wasn't Yinjiao's headquarters? There was also the Flaming River Castle in the middle of the trading point. It was much taller than the other houses in the trading point. The Longboat tribe saw it last night, but because they didn't get close, they didn't see the full view of the castle. When they thought about what the Longboat tribe did when Yinjiao migrated after the cataclysm, some people secretly regretted it. Maybe they should have taken the initiative to help Yinjiao, instead of taking the opportunity to negotiate. They really didn't expect Yinjiao to develop so quickly after the cataclysm and the Great Migration. How long had it been? Stop looking, let's go. A member of the Longboat tribe called his companion, who was standing outside, into the house. The banquet that Yinjiao had set was today, and they had to get ready to go. According to the customs of most tribes, banquets would be held during the day, not at night. There were too many unsettling factors at night, so they would choose to avoid the dark time. Of course, Yinjiao's banquet was held in consideration of the customs of most tribes. It was held in the morning. After they were informed by Yinjiao that they could proceed, they packed up and headed towards the Flaming River Castle, at the center of the trading point. Every tribe brought a lot of people with them, But not all of them would enter the Flaming River Castle. Even if the Yinjiao people wanted to, the other tribes might not agree. After all, they didn't fully trust the Yinjiao people, so they had to be cautious. They left a group of people to go in, and another group to observe the situation at the trading point outside the Flaming River Castle. In fact, they also left people outside the trading point. If there was any movement outside the trading point, they would send out a signal. Groups of people came out of the houses one by one. Even if they met people from other tribes who were familiar with each other, or had old grudges with each other, no one was in the mood to talk. They were all looking in the direction of the Flaming River Castle, thinking about what might happen next. There were a few entrances to the trading point, but there was only one entrance to the Flaming River Castle. All the tribes that were invited could only enter through the Flaming River Castle's only entrance. The entrance to the Flaming River Castle was a huge square, slightly longer horizontally, and more than 20 meters tall. Even the Cha-Cha tribe could easily walk through this entrance. There was a huge stone sculpture protruding from the top of the door. It was in the shape of two horns, just like the Yinjiao totem. On each of the four corners of the door, there was a huge curved cone-shaped fang. It was much bigger than the two that Xiao Xian gave to the Feng tribe. If the top and bottom teeth were arranged in a vertical line, they would exceed the height of the door. The lower pair of teeth protruded slightly outwards, so the tips of the upper and lower pair of teeth could be separated. This solved the problem of the beast teeth being too long, and the combination made the door more three-dimensional. It made the door look like the mouth of a giant beast, waiting for people to walk in by themselves. Yang Guang shone his light on the door. The four huge fangs reflected a dazzling light, making people who saw them panic. They felt as if the four huge beast fangs would close at any moment and tear them apart. Although the people from the big tribes were shocked, at least they had seen the world and encountered giant beasts before. Even if those giant beasts were not as big as the owner of these four fangs, their past experiences allowed them to not lose their composure. At least on the surface, they still looked calm. However, the people from the smaller tribes who had never been in close contact with giant beasts felt their legs tremble. They kept shouting in shock. "My ancestors are those fangs? Are they real beast fangs? They're real. I just touched them. I swear to the totem that they're real." The person who spoke trembled, shaking off the cold air that came from his body. It was as if the beast fang's murderous aura was still stuck to his hands. How did they get such huge fangs? If I met a giant beast like this, I would have run away. Then you wouldn't need to run away. You might have been trampled to death, or scared to death before you could run away. When Abuli brought the drumming tribesmen in and saw all these, his appetite was temporarily forgotten. His 2 feet seemed to have knocked against each other, and he almost fell down. Luckily, Abuli reacted quickly and did not embarrass himself here. The tribes that lived around the Flaming River region might have seen the giant river beasts that still existed, but those beasts were far away from them. They didn't have a deep impression of them, and those beasts didn't interfere with their lives. However, these beasts that Yinjiao brought out were real giant beasts on land. They could run and hunt in the forest. If those giant beasts really existed here, what would they do? However, with Yinjiao here, they could definitely deal with those giant beasts with these 4 fangs, right? At this moment, some people who were originally afraid of Yinjiao's existence started to rejoice. Thank goodness Yinjiao was here. They couldn't stop the river from disappearing. They couldn't change the fact that the riverbank was nearing. The fearsome beasts in the forest could come at any time. They were afraid, but they didn't have the heart to fight. However, if Yinjiao was here, perhaps they would be safer? Yinjiao's headquarters were on the other side of the river. They were directly in close contact with the fearsome beasts in the forest. As the saying went, even if the sky fell, there was a tall person to hold it up. If the fearsome beasts wanted to cross the river and pounce, the Yinjiao people would be there to stop them. What was there to worry about? Despite their fear, they let out a long sigh of relief. The people of small tribes who lived in the cracks of society could always find a reason to comfort themselves. The Yinjiao warriors guarding the entrance of the Flaming River Castle's Beast Fang Gate naturally saw the reactions of everyone who passed by. Even the people from the large tribes who passed by in front, no matter how well they pretended, their emotions were still captured by the warriors. Thinking of this, the warriors guarding the gate couldn't help but smile. If it weren't for the fact that they were still guarding the gate and had to maintain a serious posture, they would have laughed out loud. These 4 giant beast fangs were the fruits of the Yinjiao's hunting team's efforts. Because 1 or 2 people, or even a few people, couldn't successfully hunt such a huge beast, Xiao Xian, Ao, and Zheng Luo, who had already resigned from their positions as chief, joined the hunting team in order to find these 4 fangs that could hold up the fort. And now, it seemed like the results were pretty good. All the time and energy they spent waiting, setting up a trap, and hunting the giant beasts were not wasted. In the Flaming River Castle's giant beast fang gate, other than the 4 most attractive fangs, there were also people who paid attention to the walls around the gate. The door and walls of this place were built from huge chunks of stone, which were then carefully carved and polished. Even if people from other tribes wanted to do this, they would have spent much more time than Yinjiao. But who asked the Yinjiao people to be so strong? They couldn't be envious of them. In fact, in many people's eyes, the Yinjiao people were just strong barbarians. But now, after seeing the layout and architecture of the trading point, they began to understand that maybe the Yinjiao people weren't just strong. A person with only strength, but no brains wouldn't be able to do something like this. The Beast Fang Gate had already left a deep impression on the people who came here. Maybe after this, even if they saw a fierce beast again in the future, they wouldn't think that those fangs were that big. And for those who came here, after walking through the gate, the impact of the beast fangs hadn't even dissipated before they were greeted by another wave of impact. After entering the gate, there was a straight path that led to the meeting place. The tall walls on both sides of this path were inlaid with the bones of giant beasts. On the grayish-white stone walls, the white bones formed the shapes of giant beasts. Even without the outer skin, the bones could still support the shape of the giant beasts. These bones inlaid on the walls completely recreated the shape of the giant beasts in the forest. The aura left on the bones wantonly attacked the mentality of those who walked through this path. Abuli felt his legs start to shake again. He was wearing a fur coat in the warm weather. He was originally sweating from the heat, but now he felt that no matter how thick the fur was, it couldn't block out the cold aura from the bones. His hair felt like it was going to stand up. Many of them had heard of the dangers and ferocious giant beasts on the other side of the river, but they had never really come into contact with them. But now, the layout of the Flaming River Castle allowed them to have a preliminary understanding of the giant beasts in the forest for the first time. The beast hides and meat they exchanged for before were all cut, and cut to remove most of the beast's aura. Now, they finally experienced what it was like to walk among the giant beasts. Animal remains, such as teeth, bones, horns, and so on, were the things that tribesmen came into contact with the most. They obtained food from these animals, and the parts left behind from these animals were used to make tools or decorations. Sometimes they were sold in exchange for other resources, so that they could make full use of their resources. However, the animals they ate, the beast horns, teeth, bones, and so on, compared to what they were seeing now, seemed to belong to 2 different worlds. They had never seen any tribe use such huge and ferocious ornaments as decorations. They were both horns, but one was a normal buffalo horn, and the other was a giant forest beast's horn that was several times taller than a human. How could they be compared? Seeing these decorations, many of the invited tribesmen from the Flaming River region didn't think much of it at first. They only wanted to come for a meal and then leave. But now they couldn't help but become more cautious. If a tribe like this got angry, who knew if they would use them as practice? In the future, it would be better if they didn't provoke the Yinjiao people. The grayish-white buildings, white beast bones, dark beast horns, and the decorations made of beast fangs and walls lacked the elegance of the slave master cities on the other side of the sea. Instead, it had the flamboyant wildness of the tribesmen on the mainland. Chapter 6:17. After they walked out of the straight path, they saw a spacious, open-air venue. There were a total of 24 tribes that came. Each tribe brought 50 to 100 people, so there were about 1,800 people in total. Including the Yinjiao people, there were more than 2,000 people in the venue right now. Even if these 2,000 people sat in the venue, there was still a lot of space left. Even if the entire Yinjiao tribe came, they would still be able to move around freely. There was a circle of tall stone houses built around the venue. The walls of the houses were also inlaid with beast bones, adding a fierce atmosphere to the venue. Facing the Flaming River Castle's Beast Gate was the tallest building in the castle, the Flaming River Tower. In the open space in front of the Flaming River Tower, there were 7 wide chairs made of beast bones. These 7 chairs were made from the same beast's bones as the 4 fangs in front of the Flaming River Castle's Beast Gate. The white bones were carved into the chairs with patterns, and there was even a thick layer of beast skin on top of them. There were several V patterns on the beast skin, and the people sitting on the chairs would be able to sit right in the middle of the V pattern. Those were the seats for the chief, shaman, and elders of Yinjiao. The 7 chairs were arranged in a straight line, and the one in the middle was the seat of the current chief Gigu. As the head elder, Shaoxian's seat was right next to Gigu's. He and Guizhe sat on either side of Gigu. It was the first time Guizhe had attended a banquet like this in front of so many outsiders, so he couldn't help but feel a little nervous. However, in order not to embarrass himself, Guizhe's expression was calm. He had a slight smile on his face and looked very relaxed, just like the old shaman years ago. No matter what he was thinking, at least he could put on a front, so that no one would be able to see through it. He had to be more careful in front of outsiders. When everyone had arrived, Gigu stood up and took 2 steps forward, revealing 2 strong arms that swayed slowly with each step. His steps were steady, and every step he took carried an undisguised fierce aura. As the current leader of Yinjiao, he had to put on an imposing front. Today is the first grand banquet of the Yinjiao tribe's Flaming River trading point. It is also a true beginning. After today, the Flaming River trading point would be officially opened. No matter if it was a tribe from the Flaming River region or a team from afar, they could all come here to trade. The Flaming River trading point has the best beast hides, the best fearsome beast meat, and even some rare herbs. Those who are interested in trading here in the long term can discuss this with the Yinjiao tribe after the banquet. Elder Zhengluo is in charge of the Flaming River trading point. As he spoke, Zhengluo stood up from his seat and scanned the crowd. I am Zhengluo. I am in charge of the Flaming River trading point. Those who had more contact with Yinjiao wondered when Yinjiao had a new leader. On the other hand, those who were invited to the Flaming River region only glanced at Zhengluo briefly before looking around, wondering when they could start eating. They could already smell the tempting aroma. Zhengluo didn't mind these people's attitudes. There were many things that couldn't be achieved with words. Actions had to be taken. Even if these people didn't care now, they would still fight to find him in the future. After showing his face, Zhengluo returned to his seat. His most impressive introduction had yet to come. Guihe didn't say much. He knew that some of the people who came were here to watch the show, and some were here to eat and drink. They had no intention of listening to him. However, it didn't matter. There would be times when these people would listen carefully. Gigu briefly introduced the Flaming River trading point. When he saw Shaoxian looking at him, he clapped his hands. The Flaming River Grand Banquet officially begins. Thump, thump thump, thump thump, thump thump thundered rhythmically. The sound waves blasted through the crowd as if they were about to explode. Some of the weaker people showed signs of discomfort. Their eardrums hurt from the vibrations. The stone cups on the table trembled with the sound of the drums. The bottom of the cups clashed against the stone table, making a cracking sound. Crack! The 2 exquisite porcelain cups on Gigu's table cracked and shattered into pieces. The cups and bowls placed on the other tables were all made of stone. None of them were made of pottery. When they first sat down, they noticed this. Some people thought that the Flaming Horn tribe was just SOSO. In some people's eyes, exquisite pottery was more valuable than stone tools. It better reflected the tribe's superb craftsmanship. Some people even thought that Yinjiao was just SO. How stingy. But now, When they saw Gigu's broken pottery, they finally understood why Yinjiao used stone tools instead of pottery. This was because the pottery was too fragile and could not withstand the impact of the drums. Now that they thought about it, the crowd understood. It wasn't that Yinjiao couldn't produce pottery. It was just that stone tools were stronger. Moreover, after careful observation, they found that the stones Yinjiao used to make the wine vessels were of medium quality and above. Of course, they wouldn't be so easily broken. Experienced people could tell the quality of the stone wine vessels at first glance. They could also use a stone to make a wine cup. But Yinjiao used so many good stones to make wine vessels. Other than a few well-known large tribes, other tribes might not have such generosity. Gigu seemed to not care. He swept away the broken pottery shards and placed a golden wine vessel on the table. Under the light of Yangguang, the wine vessel seemed to be plated with a golden halo. The raw materials of this wine vessel were obtained from the desert slave owners. After being remolded, it had a new look. There was a ferocious beast head on it. Before the crowd could take their eyes off the golden wine vessel on Gigu's table, they smelled a tempting aroma. Suddenly, most people didn't have the mood to care about anything else. Eating was the most important thing. To them, if survival was reduced to one word, it would be eating. Music and dancing? They couldn't appreciate it. Talking about life? Not interested. If Yinjiao really did do a lot of things before the main dish, they would probably be very resentful. Fortunately, Yinjiao was straightforward. Abuli and the others from the Ji tribe rubbed their hands. It's coming, it's coming. Stone cauldrons over 3 meters in diameter were moved into the venue. Each cauldron was carried by 3 Yinjiao warriors, each holding 1 foot of the stone cauldron. The cauldrons weren't empty. They were filled with soup. The tempting aroma that had floated over just now was the smell of this soup. Even though it was so heavy, the cauldrons filled with soup were steadily moved forward. Not a single drop of the soup inside was spilled out. 24 tribes placed a cauldron in the area where each tribe was located. Then they set up firewood. To the slave masters on the other side of the sea, cauldrons had a special symbolic meaning. But to the Yinjiao people, they used cauldrons because they were convenient and beautiful. Not long after, the hot soup in the cauldron began to bubble and gurgle. The aroma became even more intense. It constantly stimulated people's sense of smell and taste. It was as if they could imagine the smell just by smelling it. However, none of the 24 tribes began to serve the soup. Even if some people's eyes were about to pop out, and they couldn't stop swallowing, they still didn't move. They were waiting for the leaders of their tribes to give the order. Those who could be brought into the venue and represent their tribes to attend the banquet were all elites in their respective tribes. They wouldn't act recklessly according to their whims. Until a Yinjiao warrior came over with a long ladle and scooped a portion into a bowl. Abuli swallowed his saliva and stared at the Yinjiao person holding the bowl. He saw the person holding the bowl and taking a sip. He smacked his lips and smiled at them. The taste is not bad. Just nice, we can drink it now. Even without Abuli's words, the other Ji tribesmen had already gathered around. They took the ladle from the Yinjiao warrior's hands and eagerly served Abuli and his wife. After all, if their leader didn't eat, their subordinates wouldn't dare to taste it first. The Yinjiao person seemed to be testing the taste, but in reality, he was proving to the others that the soup wasn't poisoned and could be drunk without worry. The soup in the stone cauldron was made from beast meat. There was even a layer of oil floating on top. They didn't know what the Yinjiao people had put in the soup. Not only was it fragrant, it tasted good too. But Abuli couldn't care less about the heat. He only regained his senses after drinking a bowl. There was no meat in the soup. He scooped a spoonful into the cauldron, but didn't see any meat. Where's the meat? They didn't come here to drink soup. Even if there were delicious worms, it couldn't satisfy their thirst for fearsome beast meat. Abuli looked at the Yinjiao person in confusion. His long toes dug into the ground. Where's the meat? He wanted to eat meat. At this moment, the former Chief Ao and the big head Ta, who were sitting at the front of the Flaming Horn elders, walked out from their seats. Ao stretched his arms and said to Ta, "It's time to serve the meat." Chapter 618. The oil in the stone pot floated along with the bubbles that kept rising. The meat broth that was emitting a tempting aroma could no longer attract the attention of the crowd. Ao didn't lower his voice when he said, "It's time to serve the meat." Who here wasn't strong? With their hearing ability, they could naturally hear what Ao said just now. It was good to have meat. The people who were complaining about Yinjiao being stingy and giving soup, but not meat immediately sat down and waited. Abuli even told everyone except his wife to stay away. Yinjiao had a big place, so why were they all sitting so close together? With more space, it was more convenient for them to eat meat in different positions. When they were full, they could stand up and continue eating. As Ao and Ta walked out, a stronger meat aroma wafted into the hall. The flaming horn warriors carried large stone plates as they walked into the field. Each plate had a whole cooked fearsome beast on it. These fearsome beasts were still taller than humans, even when they were lying on the ground. Now that they were cooked, they still looked like a big lump on the plate. For the tribesmen who were used to cooked food, raw meat did not have any meat aroma that they liked. It only had the smell of blood and a slight saltiness. Those who had touched gold would also notice another smell, and that was the smell of metal. Don't ask them how they knew. Who wouldn't be curious when they first got their hands on a piece of gold? Their keen sense of smell was almost entirely focused on the cooked meat at this time. The food that was brought over was really tempting. This was fearsome beast meat. Fearsome beast meat that could be eaten for free. However, after these large stone plates were brought in, they didn't go directly to the seats of each tribe. Instead, they followed Ao. At this time, Ao was holding a stone plate with a diameter of almost 2 meters. There was a green spearhead on the clean stone plate. Tonight, he was just an errand boy. Even his father was just a supporting character. The main character of the show was his grandfather, the former chief, the current elder Ao. Ao held the spear and moved it around a little. Then, he placed the spearhead on the fire in Yinjiao's seat. The tribesmen believed that fire could dispel diseases. This was an idea passed down from generation to generation, after their ancestors mastered the art of making fire. Most of the time, unless they were using their bare hands to pick up food, they would also roast the food over the fire. After burning it, Ao gently stroked the long handle, then turned the spear around and stopped with the spearhead facing upwards. Ao took his spear and walked to the left of Yinjiao's seat. He came to the front of the longboat tribe. These few big tribes were actually randomly chosen by the leaders of their tribes. Mu Fa, the chief of the longboat tribe, was lucky enough to get a seat at the front of the group. At that time, the people of the longboat tribe were quite proud of themselves. They looked at the other tribes who were seated at the back and said, "So what if you came first? Aren't you still squeezed behind by the longboat tribe who came later?" Therefore, the longboat tribe was Ao's first target. When Ao stood in front of the longboat tribe's seat, the chief of the longboat tribe, Mu Fa, looked over. One was the former chief of Yinjiao, and the other was the current chief of the longboat tribe. There were some unpleasant things between the two tribes. The two of them only exchanged a glance, and in an instant, their auras clashed like invisible lightning. Those who were close to them could almost hear the terrifying crackling sounds in the air. Mu Fa prided himself on being superior, and would not act like the barbaric Yinjiao tribesmen. Therefore, on the surface, he still wore a calm smile, as if he did not want to argue with those barbaric Yinjiao tribesmen. Ao did not say anything. He waved his hand, and Ta and the others behind him carried the plates over. Whoosh! Ao's wrist that was holding the spear shook, and the spear in his hand pierced out. His murderous aura surged out in an instant, spreading to the surroundings like a gust of cold wind. It was not aimed at anyone in the audience, but the warriors with sharp senses could clearly sense it, especially Mu Fa, who was the closest to Ao. "Trying to scare me?" Humph. Other than that moment of shock, Mu Fa quickly calmed down and did not panic. He sat there steadily like a mountain, as if everything in front of him was just a passing cloud. Since the Yinjiao held this feast, it was definitely not for killing. Therefore, Mu Fa believed that Ao's intention was only to scare them, to see them panic in front of everyone. How cunning! In fact, Mu Fa had wronged Ao. Ao wanted to show off his aura, But he was not targeting the longboat tribe. The murderous aura that he had just revealed was just out of habit. At times like this, he was always unable to contain his excitement. Ta knew that his father was already immersed. He only controlled the stone plate above his head, turning it from time to time to adjust the angle. Their coordination was flawless. As the former chief, Ao's aura was undoubtedly very strong. The spear was like the sharp claws of a fierce beast pouncing on its prey. The sharpened spearhead whistled, as if it was going to destroy everything in its path. It went straight for the cooked fierce beast on the stone plate. Puff! A soft sound was heard. It was too soft, not like the sound of the spear piercing into the meat of the beast. With this soft sound, Ao stepped forward and swept the spear in his hand to the side. A piece of white meat the size of a millstone flew out from the stone plate. The greasy piece of meat drew a golden light under Yang Guang's hand, and finally landed on the empty stone plate that had been waiting for a long time. Puff, puff, puff. The spear did not stop there, and it went faster and faster. Ao's figure also became illusory. He was still standing there a moment ago, but in the next moment, only his afterimage could be seen. As the spear pierced again and again, pieces of meat of different sizes and shapes fell from the original stone plate to another stone plate, piling up in an orderly manner. The people who saw this took a deep breath, suspecting that they were hallucinating. It didn't feel like they were cutting meat, but a hunter with a spear fighting a fierce beast. It was just cutting meat. Where did such a strong murderous aura come from? Fortunately, all the murderous aura was directed at the cooked fierce beast on the plate. Fortunately, the Yinjiao only used the cooked fierce beast to cut it, and not butchered it on the spot. Although some people liked to watch them butchered on the spot, not every tribe liked this method. In the beginning, when the Yinjiao was discussing the Flaming River Grand Banquet, they had thought of butchering the fierce beast on the spot, but they later dismissed the idea. Why did they have to show off their killer moves? It was enough to show off their skills. They still had to keep their trump cards hidden. Yes, the Yinjiao were just showing off their skills, not showing off their hunting skills. They would be idiots if they revealed all their hunting techniques. There were many capable foreign tribesmen out there. If they learned all of their techniques, the flaming horns would be devastated. These were skills that had been accumulated through countless generations of Yinjiao experience and countless actual hunts. Why would they show off their skills to others? Tribesmen were very sensitive to the protection of their skills. When faced with a live fierce beast, they couldn't help but use their killer moves, but cooked meat was different. They would only show off their skills, and not show off their true killer moves. This was just a game they had played before, and now they were playing it again. In front of the longboat tribe, Ao was showing off his skills more and more. His hands moved faster, and the aura around him grew stronger. Even the tribes further away could feel his murderous aura, much less the longboat tribe. The faces of the longboat tribesmen kept twitching. Even if Ao's murderous aura wasn't directed at them, they could still feel the murderous aura emanating from him. This made them feel a chill down their spines, and goosebumps appeared all over their bodies. Some people wanted to divert their attention so that they would not be affected by Ao's actions. However, when they looked at the other stone plate, they realized that the meat that was cut off was basically a whole piece of muscle. The wide muscles were cut off in large chunks, and so were the long and tight muscles. Even the most difficult part, the rope-like tendons, were cut off neatly, almost touching the bone. They tried their best to keep the whole muscle intact. The faces of those who saw this scene twitched even more violently. As expected, the Yinjiao people were showing off their skills. They weren't just cutting the meat, they were removing the meat. Cutting meat was easy, but removing the meat was difficult. If they didn't understand the beast well, how could they remove the meat intact? While many people's attention was attracted by the pieces of meat that were completely removed, the chief of the longboat tribe, Mu Fa, had a flash of doubt in his mind. The spearhead on that spear was strange. The sound of the pieces of meat falling onto the stone plate, like raindrops, finally came to a stop. At this time, only a clean skeleton was left on the stone plate that originally held the meat. On the other stone plate, the pieces of almost complete muscle that had been removed were stacked on top of it. Ta and the others placed the stone plate next to the longboat tribe's seats. That empty space was specially set aside for the stone plate. It was finally over. The sound of collective sighs of relief could be heard. Damn, it was just removing the meat. Was there a need to remove it in such a thrilling manner? I'm getting goosebumps just looking at it. Don't think that I can't see your pride just because you put on a serious face. The Yinjiao people were just showing off, right? Wasn't that right? Showing off that you've eaten fearsome beasts so often that you're familiar with every piece of meat? Or are you trying to show off your spear skills? Fine, even though they were complaining, they were actually quite shocked. Especially when Ao was removing the meat. Some people held their breaths, as if they were watching a hunt with their own eyes. And his proficiency in removing the meat. If he didn't eat fearsome beast meat often, how could he be so skilled? Eating fearsome beast meat often. How envious. Maybe this was the right way to eat fearsome beast meat? Ao glanced at the longboat tribe members whose expressions kept changing. He waved his hand behind him and said, "Next." Ao was very satisfied with his performance at such a grand feast. His serious face twitched, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. Showing off at the Flaming River Grand Feast was Ao's idea. Wasn't there supposed to be meat at the feast? I'll give you the meat. I won't be stingy at all. It's a feast to show off. If I'm stingy, I'll be a disgrace to the tribe. I have to be generous. It's just that his method was a little rough. As for why Ao had such skills, who didn't have a stupid past? When Ao was still a child, the Yinjiao tribe was still trapped on the other side of the river, and isolated from the rest of the world. The tribesmen didn't have much entertainment. They either practiced basic hunting techniques, learned how to make stone tools, or chatted with a bunch of kids. Ao wasn't interested in those things. His favorite and most anticipated activity, every day, was to cut the big pieces of beast meat that he made after cooking the meat soup at home into small pieces. If the prey he brought back was small and could be thrown into the pot whole, he would dissect the meat whole. After Ao awakened his totemic power, this activity became more frequent. Because he had more strength after his awakening, it was easier to cut the meat. After he got tired of it, Ao started to increase the difficulty. At first he cut the meat into pieces, then he cut the meat into pieces, then he cut the meat into whole muscles. This was how he developed his skills during his boredom. Most of the ferocious beasts that were active in the forest didn't have much fat, especially the swift and fierce beasts. Their muscles were tight, and after boiling, they could tear off pieces of meat. Ao liked to peel off the meat piece by piece, and the tool he needed was just an ordinary spear. This was Ao's hobby. He also liked to show off his skills in front of others. In the entire Yinjiao tribe, there might be people who had the same hobby, but no one was better at cutting meat than him. Therefore, whenever a large number of people gathered together, Ao would demonstrate this skill of his. And the Flaming River Grand Feast was undoubtedly another platform for him to show off his skills. He liked to see those people's sullen faces when they couldn't wait to stop, but held back because of their pride. He could still show off 23 more times. How satisfying. The people from the smaller tribes at the end of the table saw Ao's actions and instantly became nervous. How would they feel when Ao walked over and cut the meat in front of them? Would they be scared out of their wits? Just thinking about it made them lose their appetite. They knew that Yinjiao meat wasn't that delicious. However, compared to the smaller tribes who were looking at Ao's cutting skills, the leaders of the larger tribes all looked at the spearhead in Ao's hand. A green spearhead? A gold weapon? Why would there be gold weapons of this color? They had also taken many gold weapons from the slave masters who escaped from the desert. There were dark gold, light gold, white, red, but none of them were completely green. Wasn't gold the most common color in their gold weapons? Because metal had always been treated as treasures and taken good care of, there were no signs of rust on them. Therefore, they had never seen any impure colors on metal. At this moment, seeing the green spearhead on the spear in Ao's hand, everyone couldn't help but ponder, especially the longboat tribe chief Muefe, who was closest to Ao and felt it the most. Even though Ao had already left with Tower, his ears still echoed in that moment. When Ao waved his spear, the sound of the spearhead slicing through the air echoed in his ears. It was shocking. That was the sound of a gold weapon, but it was different from the ones in their hands. Was Yanjiao only showing their ability to hunt fearsome beasts? Chapter 619. Ao walked around and served the first round of meat dishes. However, at this time, not everyone in the tribe could carelessly eat without any psychological burden. The bigger the tribe, the more things they had to think about. As for those tribes whose only goal was to eat, they quickly recovered from their days. They directly used their hands to grab the pieces of oily meat and started to chew on them. Some of them were in too much of a rush and choked. They quickly scooped out a bowl of soup from the big stone pot next to them and drank it. After drinking it, they slowly recovered and continued to eat. Thus, this was the scene on the field. Some of them were absent-minded. No one knew what they were thinking as they poked the meat in front of them with the small stone skewers next to them. The other group, on the other hand, had returned to their true colors of being gluttons. They were very engrossed in eating. Eating was their main purpose for coming here. And it was also one of their greatest pursuits in life. Ferocious beast meat was more chewy than ordinary beast meat. It was too hard for people who hadn't awakened their totem power, but it was just right for the stronger totem warriors. They felt that ordinary beast meat was too soft and tasteless. Of course, the reason why everyone liked fearsome beast meat was because it provided more energy. Exhausted energy could be quickly replenished, and the body could be adjusted more efficiently. For tribes who hadn't eaten fearsome beast meat for thousands of years, this was a heavenly delicacy. Of course, the first round of meat wasn't enough to fill their stomachs. They were all totemic warriors, so they ate more than normal people. Ao walked back with a smug smile. As soon as he sat down, Zheng Luo stood up. Stretching his arms and neck, Zheng Luo gestured to the people waiting on the side. It's time for the second round of meat. Zheng Luo's words made the tribesmen at the front lose their appetites. They were just about to start eating after some hesitation. Again, a team of Yinjiao people carried meat into the field. It wasn't whole meat, but cut up. These were different from AOTI's. The previously cooked fearsome beasts weren't especially big. They couldn't fit in the pot if they were too big, and it wasn't convenient for AO to show off when cooking them separately. So the size of the beast was carefully chosen. Now the second round of meat was roasted. This was the most common way of eating meat in each tribe. Because they were all larger dire beasts, they were cut up during the roasting process. The coarse salt that was sprinkled on the meat melted and seeped into the meat. After the surface of the meat was cooked, the person in charge of the barbecue would pat down the excess salt that had not melted and store it for later use. After that, the barbecued meat would be sent to the venue. No other spices or ingredients were used, only salt was used. The roasted meat was tasty and rough, with the fragrance of the ancient forest trees. This was the most primitive taste. This was the most common way of eating in Yanjiao. And the roasted meat served here was also the same way. Because the meat had just been taken from the fire rack. When it was sent into the hall, the sound of the meat sizzling could still be heard. The aroma of barbecued meat immediately filled the venue, and many people couldn't help but take a deep breath. How fragrant! Zheng Luo took out a large knife. In front of everyone, he washed the blade with water, wiped it, and rinsed it again. Then, he placed it over the fire for a while before taking it out. This was to prove to everyone that the knife had been washed and roasted, so there was no problem cutting meat. Holding the knife, Zheng Luo led a team of people holding large stone skewers to the left of Yinjiao's table. They came to the Longboat tribe in the first row and gave a friendly smile. The Longboat tribe. Why were they always the first ones to face them? The banquet had just begun. Who knew how many more rounds of meat delivery would happen later? The Longboat tribe chief turned his head and looked at the Mang tribe chief behind them. Should we change seats? The Mang tribe chief looked up at the sky. The moon was beautiful tonight. Mu Fa looked at the Hui tribe on the right side of the flaming horned seat. They were also seated at the head of the table. The Hui tribe chief buried his head in distributing the meat to his tribesmen, looking very engrossed. He didn't even look at Mu Fa. What the fuck? What kind of bad luck was this? They thought being in the first row would make them feel better. But they didn't expect to encounter such a situation. The longboat tribe felt bitter. 2 warriors carried the 2 ends of the stone skewers and followed closely behind Zheng Luo. The longboat tribe seemed to understand something when they saw the people holding the meat skewers and knives. Wait! Mu Fa had just opened his mouth when Zheng Luo moved. The blade drew a streak of green light in the air. In the blink of an eye, its momentum suddenly changed and turned into several shadows. Like a pack of wolves hunting for their prey, they attacked the piece of meat pierced through the stone drill from every angle with a fierce pressure. The seemingly tyrannical knife momentum stopped in time when it cut into the flesh. There was no sound of the knife cutting into the stone drill. There wasn't even the sound of the knife cutting into the bone. As the blade flashed, pieces of meat seemed to be lined up from the meat skewers, running towards the large stone plate in front of the longboat tribe. Then they were neatly arranged. The large stone plate originally held the meat that Ao had cut off. It was now empty and could be used to hold the second round of barbecued meat. The thin and thick pieces of meat were lined up neatly with the texture of rocks. Zheng Luo's green blade danced like flowers in his hand. If it weren't for the fact that he told them not to be too ostentatious, Duo Kong would have stood up with his subordinates and applauded. When to cut straight, when to cut diagonally, when to cut horizontally, where to cut, where to slice, where to cut. Zheng Luo was very clear on these points. He couldn't compare to Ao when it came to cutting meat. But when it came to cutting meat, if he said he was second, no one would dare to say they were first. When Zheng Luo wasn't the chief, he was in charge of dividing the meat in the hunting team. He waved his large blade and took turns to cut the meat. Thin and thick pieces of meat, shredded meat of almost the same length and thickness, and small pieces of meat of similar sizes were neatly stacked on the stone plate. It looked quite three-dimensional and beautiful. The wind from the blade spread in all directions. The longboat tribe's hair was blown up by the wind from time to time. Their hair was tied in braids. Braids! It wasn't a strand of hair. They were bragging so much. The airwaves that blew over also carried the chill of the blade's edge, causing the fine hairs on one's face to stand on end. One could not help but imagine what would happen if that blade were to cut one's own body. They couldn't help but shiver just thinking about it. They wanted to shout at Zheng Luo, "Don't be shy, just let me cut the meat." But for the sake of their pride they endured. At a time like this, if they were to speak first, the Flaming Horn tribe would have the upper hand, and the other tribes would laugh at them. Endure. Zheng Luo, who was still waving his large blade, had no intention of stopping. He was very excited. "Didn't you all forget about me? Didn't you all think about the meat? Fine, I'll give you the meat. At the same time, I'll give you all a chance to remember me. Who cut the meat for you? How it was cut. How it was cut. What it was like when it was cut. Remember it all." Everyone present couldn't help but think, Yinjiao meat really isn't that delicious. Chapter 620. Inside the Flaming River trading point, there were many people who were left outside to observe the situation. They didn't enter the Flaming River castle to participate in the feast. Although there was food given to them, it was obvious that the food they ate was different from the food inside the Flaming River castle. The difference was definitely not small. Here the raw and decomposed meat was distributed to them. They had to roast it themselves. Some of these people roasted the meat while the others observed from outside. After observing for so long, they didn't hear any other suspicious movements after hearing the thunderous drum sounds from the Flaming River castle. They didn't hear any whistles from their chief either. This meant that there was nothing unusual inside. What do you think is going on inside the Flaming River castle? What are they eating? The sentry asked his companion beside him in boredom. Who knows? We're unlucky to be left here. Otherwise I would have gone in too. Did you smell the aroma over there? It's obviously different from ours. The person who spoke couldn't help but gulp. He looked at the Flaming River castle with envy. Zai. Hey, look over there. Yinjiao is transporting food over there again. The people who were watching all looked at the wide road in the Flaming River trading point that led to the Flaming River castle. Many fearsome beasts were pulling carts. However, this time, there was no smell of meat inside. The carts were also covered with cloth, so they couldn't see what was inside. Only when the carts swayed slightly could they hear the soft clanking sounds from inside. It sounded like the clanking of pottery. Yinjiao's fearsome beasts were assigned tasks today. They were in charge of pulling the carts and transporting the goods to the Flaming River Castle's logistics department for further processing. Even the Cha-Cha were assigned to transport the goods. Just like the rest of the Yinjiao tribes, they were all busy. At the same time, inside the Flaming River Castle, Zheng Luo had already arrived at the last tribe's seat. He waved his green broadsword and sliced the rough meat into thick slices. The tender meat was sliced into thin strips. After he finished slicing and scraping the bones, only the bare bones were left. The stone plate beside him was already filled with slices, chunks, and strands of meat. Whoosh! The green broadsword slashed through the air like an exploding firework. Then it merged back into one. He sheathed his broadsword and left. Zheng Luo went back to his seat and sat down. Just like Ao, he had a carefree and proud smile after showing off his skills. The two former leaders of Yinjiao were serving them meat and vegetables. Was this not a great hospitality? If other people knew what the two former leaders of Yinjiao were thinking right now, they would definitely shout, "This is too much. We can't accept it." The new leader, Gigu, sat in the middle of the seats. He looked at Zheng Luo, who had returned to his seat, then glanced at Ao and moved his finger. His hands were itching to show off his skills. He could show off too. Ao could cut meat, Zheng Luo could cut meat, and he could actually remove every joint from the beasts that he often ate. Just one stab would do. No more than 3 stab would do. Gui Zhe, who was sitting next to his father, coughed lightly and reminded his father to pay attention to his image. Now that he was the leader, he represented Yinjiao in front of the other tribes. In fact, Gigu wasn't the only one in Yinjiao who was itching to show off his skills. Everyone else looked at the restless Yinjiao people. Their hearts were in their throats and their expressions changed. These people wouldn't do it one by one, right? Couldn't they just let them have a good meal? This was a show of strength, right? Right? Whether or not it was, Yinjiao had achieved its goal. However, this kind of intimidation could only be done once or twice. More than that, and the effect wouldn't be as strong. Yinjiao people understood this. So after Ao and Zheng Luo showed off their skills, the scene finally returned to normal. What they meant by normal was that the food was really a whole roasted beast. No one was in charge of cutting the meat, nor was anyone slicing, cutting, or shredding the meat. This satisfied everyone's expectations from the first 2 rounds of food. Didn't you want to do it yourself? Fine, you can do it. But the people in the hall only realized how troublesome it was when they started doing it themselves. Even if the beast meat was cooked, it wasn't easy to cut it. Without understanding the structure of the beast, it was easy to cut the hard bones. The meat was fine, but they didn't want their knives. The bones of ferocious beasts were many times harder than those of ordinary wild beasts. Some of the bones of ferocious beasts were so hard that they could even make a dent in a saber made of medium to high-quality stone. Not everyone was rich enough to care about their own knives. Those who felt sorry for their own knives were much more careful when cutting the meat. They only cut the meat into small pieces. It was completely different from Ao and Gui's previous experience of cutting meat. Many people couldn't help but think, if I knew this would happen, I would have let the Yinjiao people continue. Forget it, I'll cut it myself. Thinking back to when Ao and Zheng Luo cut the meat, they felt a chill run down their spines. It was better to cut the meat slowly themselves. After 3 rounds of meat were served, the hungry people's stomachs were filled. After all, there was a lot of fearsome beast meat in each round. Moreover, fearsome beast meat was more filling. Sometimes, eating a beast might not even be as good as eating a palm-sized piece of fearsome beast meat. Just as everyone was thinking about how to serve the 4th round of meat, a group of people entered the hall and delivered the 4th round of meat. At first glance, other than the fact that the 4th round of meat was cut, it didn't look much different from the 3rd round of meat. But on closer inspection, the meat in the 4th round wasn't whole but cut into pieces. It was also rarer than the first 3 rounds of meat. There was even blood seeping out of the cuts. Furthermore, along with the 4th round of meat, there were 3 stone bowls. Each of the stone bowls contained powders of different colors. What was that? They knew what was in the first bowl. It was coarse salt. But they didn't know what was in the second and third bowls. They'd never seen them before. Someone sniffed and sneezed. It was a little pungent. Their noses itched when they got close. What is this? Someone muttered in confusion. The Yinjiao people made it. It should be edible. Who cares? Eat. A tribal chief sitting at the back of the table directly cut off the roasted part of the meat with the knife he carried with him. He glanced at the meat and placed it in a stone bowl filled with red powder, dipped it in a layer of red powder, and stuffed it into his mouth. At the flaming horn seat, he didn't even have time to speak before the self-taught warrior made a bold move. Everyone present also saw the scout over there. They didn't dare to eat recklessly. They wanted to see how the others reacted first. Soon the scout's face froze. After he stopped chewing, his facial muscles twitched, and his expression became distorted. He turned his head and spat out the meat in his mouth. He jumped up and ran around in the open space next to him. He didn't know what to do. He opened his mouth wide, stuck out his tongue, and quickly fanned his mouth with his two big hands. His rough face was red, and his nostrils were snorting. He was like a bull that was about to explode. He was also making strange noises in his throat. Tears were flowing out of his red eyes, and he was still sniffing. Everyone's attention was drawn to the commotion over there. They saw the chief of the tribe walking around in circles. Then, he lifted his sleeve to wipe off his tears and snot. His face was full of anger. He pointed at the flaming horned seat and shouted, "There's poison!" The drumming tribe people in the next area were so scared that they dropped the meat on their hands. Poisonous? Everyone was shocked at first. Then they all looked towards the flaming horned seat. Could it be that the Yinjiao had been hiding their claws and fangs finally revealed? Did they call all of them here just to kill them? For a moment, everyone's thoughts were like a beast out of control, galloping towards the boundless desert. They couldn't be pulled back. Xiao Xian, who heard the shout just now, almost spat out the wine in his mouth. Xiao Xian looked at Gigu and motioned for him to explain. Gigu also had the same idea. He was just going to say it, but he didn't expect the other party to eat it so eagerly. This kind of unidentified food was just presented. It smelled wrong, but this person dared to eat it directly. Look at the other tribes, who were more cautious. They were watching first. Seeing that all 24 tribesmen were looking at him, Gigu didn't rush to explain. It was useless to say more. He still had to rely on his actions. Gigu unhurriedly grabbed some red powder and sprinkled it on the meat on the plate next to him. Then he used a stone skewer, as thick as a finger, to put it into his mouth. He chewed and swallowed, his eyes full of enjoyment. After eating, Gigu said, "This is actually a kind of condiment used to flavor food. It's not poison. It's called Yinjiao chili powder." These were the spicy plants they collected, along with a few supplementary plants. They were dried in a pot, and then ground into powder. Not everyone in Yinjiao liked this kind of taste. Many people avoided it. Gigu liked this kind of chili powder very much. After getting used to it, he felt quite good eating it. This kind of chili powder was actually created by Xiao Xian. A long time ago, Xiao Xian didn't have a high status in the tribe. Even if he wanted to find some similar condiments, he wouldn't get much support. Instead, they would think that he had nothing better to do and wasn't doing his job. But now, with Xiao Xian's status, even if he just plucked a leaf out of boredom, the tribesmen would think that he had other motives. Not only would they not stop him, they would even take the initiative to help him. This was the difference. With a helper, it would be much easier to search for Zhang Xian. The ingredients used at the Flaming River Grand Banquet, including the salt and chili powder in the other bowl, were all found and made by them after they arrived at the Flaming River Grand Banquet. There were many of these ingredients in the forest. Although these spices and condiments weren't poisonous, very few animals would eat them. That was why it was easy to find them. Now Yinjiao had a large pile of them in the warehouse. It was enough for them to use for a year after the banquet. After Gigu explained how to eat them, the commotion from before quickly calmed down. The chief of Yinjiao had already shown them how to eat, so this might be the truth. Chapter 621. Now that the misunderstanding had been cleared, the chief who jumped out was thick-skinned enough to reply with an "oh" before calmly returning to his seat to continue eating. He didn't think his actions were shameful. Although it seemed reckless, he knew the problem. How could someone who could become a leader and lead the tribe to survive until now be an idiot who only had a head but not a brain? The reason why he ate so much chili powder so easily was because he was too engrossed in eating. It was rare to get a free meal, so of course he ate as much as he could. He didn't think that the 3 bowls were filled with poison. In his opinion, Yinjiao wouldn't do something like this. However, he didn't expect the chili powder to be so special that he couldn't control himself and jumped out. It was so spicy that his nose was running, and his mouth felt like it was on fire. Even after drinking the soup, the spiciness didn't wash away. He had used too much chili powder just now. Now that he knew it wasn't poisonous, after the soup, although the spiciness still lingered in his mouth, it wasn't as bad as before. Instead, he felt reluctant to part with it. After trying the chili powder, he tried another condiment. This time, he was more careful and didn't put too much on it. After tasting it, it wasn't spicy at all. However, perhaps the chief was too excited by the chili powder, so he turned to the chili powder again. As he breathed in and out, he couldn't stop sniffing. His flushed face was covered in sweat. After getting used to it, it was quite enjoyable. He was addicted to the food, and was so engrossed in it that even if a group of beauties came, they wouldn't attract his attention at all. Someone tried to persuade him. "Chief, don't eat spicy food, it's bad for your image." No, don't stop me, I want to put more on it." Other than the salt, there were also people who tried other condiments. Some liked it spicy, some didn't. The meat that was served wasn't fully cooked, so they were free to choose. They could cut off whatever they liked and sprinkle some powder on it before roasting it. Yinjiao did this not only to show off, but also to promote their food. They also wanted to tell these people that if they were interested in these condiments, they could visit the Flaming River trading point more often in the future. There was no need for Yinjiao to say anything. Those who were smart had already begun to think. For example, the people of the Pu tribe who were more sensitive in this aspect, their eyes flashed again and again. After some careful attempts, they began to discuss the direction of their future actions. It would take some time to continue roasting the uncooked meat, so it wouldn't be finished too quickly. During this time, another dish was served. This time it wasn't meat but a clean cabbage. The emerald green cabbage leaves were tightly wrapped around the cabbage, and one could clearly see the moisture content of the cabbage below. Each tribe placed a cabbage ball. Although there was only one, those cabbage balls were very big. When they stood up, they were much taller than a person. When they were distributed, everyone could eat half a leaf, let alone the whole leaf. If you want to eat these cabbages raw, you can just put them in the soup and blanch them, if you want to eat them cooked. "Is this the new crop you discovered?" the chief of the Hui tribe asked the Yinjiao people. Not bad. The Yinjiao people were quite proud. This banquet was used to show off. As a cabbage that was discovered and grown by their own tribe, and not found by other tribes. Of course, they had to display it at this banquet. Cabbages were also a great wealth of Yinjiao, and something to show off about. The freshness of the cabbage took away the greasy feeling of eating meat. After eating 4 rounds of meat, this cabbage was really good. Even those who didn't like vegetarians had to admit that this cabbage came at the right time. Some people envied Yinjiao for having their own unique crops. But for the few tribes in the front seats, this was nothing. Each tribe had more than one unique crop. If other tribes wanted to trade with them, they could only exchange for crops that had already been harvested. Moreover, they couldn't get the seeds or the crops that couldn't be planted again. This was to prevent the uniqueness of the crops from disappearing. Therefore, they really didn't put Yinjiao's cabbage in their eyes. Yinjiao could only come up with this little trick? Some people thought in their hearts. But what happened next surprised the people who had just calmed down. After the cabbage, what was brought into the banquet hall were fine-mouthed pottery vases that were half the height of a person. One was placed in front of each tribe. When the animal's skin covering the vase was removed, and the wooden cork was removed, a sweet and mellow aroma wafted out. Some people were puzzled. This is Yinjiao's homebrewed wine. Gigu smiled as he poured the wine from the vase into a shiny golden wine vessel. This was brought over after Yinjiao's main branch was repackaged. It wasn't the original vessel used to brew wine. The wine didn't look clear enough, but it was well balanced. It smelled rich and fragrant, and when it entered the mouth, it felt sweet and mellow. It constantly stimulated the salivary glands in the mouth and the stomach in the body. After drinking a mouthful, it felt like he could continue to eat more meat. Although this wine wasn't perfect, it was already considered a rare find here. It wasn't comparable to those tribes who had thousands of years of experience in brewing wine. They were skilled and talented, but it was enough to hold up the banquet. Some of the tribes in the Flaming River region had never tasted wine before. To them, this was a very profound experience. Even if they knew about the existence of wine, it was too expensive. They couldn't bring out enough to trade for it. Now, Yinjia was serving wine. Drink. Gulp. They had made the right decision to come to Yinjiao's banquet. They thought about those tribes who received news about the Flaming River banquet, but didn't dare to come, because they were worried about Yinjiao's ulterior motives. When those people found out, they would definitely regret it. It was such a good opportunity to eat and drink for free. Why didn't they come? A bunch of idiots. Those who didn't know how to take advantage of others were idiots. Many people were surprised that Yinjiao could also brew wine. The Pu tribesmen, who had a keen merchant sense, gathered together to discuss again. The Pu tribe's leader, Guang Ho, who looked like a horned frog, had an awe-inspiring look in his eyes. Because of his master's good mood, his mouth, which was already big, looked even bigger. He ate a piece of roasted meat, drank a mouthful of wine, and laughed loudly. Good. No one knew if he was praising the food and wine, or he was happy about the business opportunity, or maybe both. Before these people could continue to think about what they were thinking, a new dish was brought to the table. This time it was big pots of porridge. Actually, many tribes didn't eat porridge because they didn't grow their own crops. They found wild vegetables and fruits in the forest and cooked them in a pot. The drumming tribe, for example, did this. The people who grew crops usually ate different porridge than the ones in front of them. Most of the time, they used the same type of grain to cook porridge. Occasionally, they would mix different types of grains together, but they wouldn't use too much. However, the porridge in front of them had many different colors. At a glance, they could tell that there were many different types of food in the pot. Each grain was different in size, shape and color. Everyone looked towards Yinjiao's table, waiting for an introduction. Gigu looked at Xiaoxian beside him. He suddenly couldn't remember what this thing was called. 8 treasures porridge, Xiaoxian said. Yes, it's called 8 treasures porridge. It's made from 8 different types of precious grains. Everyone please try it. You won't be able to taste this outside of the Flaming River trading point, Gigu said loudly. The chief of the longboat tribe, Mu Fa, raised his eyebrows. His subordinates had already scooped out a bowl for him. He slowly scooped up a spoonful of porridge with the small spoon in the bowl and put it into his mouth. The porridge had the fragrance and texture of several different grains. When put together, it didn't feel chaotic. Instead, it had a unique taste that calmed people down. Of the 8 grains, some were soft and sticky, some were chewy. After swallowing it twice, he could chew it again. Just one bite was enough for Mu Fa to deduce many things. In the past, the major tribes often exchanged gifts with each other. That was why they would also give out some of their unique crops. It could be said that they had tried all the crops that the tribes grew. However, the Flaming Horn tribe's 8 treasures porridge contained 8 excellent crops, but none of them had tried any of them before. Not 1 type, not 2 types, but 8 types. Where did the Flaming Horns get these 8 types of plants? Tribesmen had always valued grains. Grains were their wealth. The doubts in front of them made them feel conflicted. Cabbage, wine, and now 8 treasures porridge. How deep were the Yinjiao's secrets? The Yinjiao people smiled in response to the puzzled looks from all sides. They quietly ate their porridge. The 8 types of grains were all grown from seeds brought over from the other side of the sea. Yinjiao people who were good at planting had put in a lot of effort into this. The 8 types of grains with the highest yields were also the ones with the strongest adaptability after being brought over. They produced the most, so after keeping some in the tribe, they could use them to add to the glory of the Flaming River feast. As for the less produced ones, they were more precious and kept for their own people. The grains chosen by the Ji family were naturally much better than normal grains. Many generations of the Ji family had focused on this. Not to mention the newly discovered grains. Even the grains planted in their own fields had been improved for thousands of years. Naturally, the grains obtained were the best of the best. Normally, Yanjiao people would never bring out these things unless it was a special guest. A feast to show off one's wealth was to show off one's wealth. This term was both positive and negative. Different tribes had different meanings. Some people overestimated themselves and ended up in debt after bragging. Bragging once caused them to suffer for 3 years. They even got into a lot of trouble because they failed to show off and ended up in trouble instead. On the other hand, some people showed off based on their true strength. What they showed off were the real surplus assets that they had that could be divided up. Yanjiao dared to show off their wealth because they weren't afraid of being targeted. If they didn't even have the guts to show off and were constantly on guard, how could they hold a feast? That was why the Flaming Horn tribe's attitude was that they had the money to do this, and they had the strength to support this banquet. They weren't afraid of anyone coming to rob them. Even if they lost their territory, they could still fight their way back. Yanjiao didn't have a primitive fire seed, so they weren't worried about being destroyed. Anyone who dared to come would have to be prepared for Yanjiao's revenge. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.